The Town of Los Gatos special meeting of the Planning Commission of December 17th, 2025 is now called to order. I will now call the roll. Commissioners, please state here when your name is called. Commissioner Burnett.
Here.
Commissioner Raspy.
Here.
Vice Chair Birch.
Here.
Commissioner Sorty.
Here.
And I am here as well. Please note for the record that Commissioner Barnett is recused due to proximity to the site, and Commissioner Stump is absent tonight. Please stand if you are able as Commissioner Burnett leads us in the pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
As the Planning Commission conducts the meeting this evening, we encourage active participation by the public, which is essential to the work of the Commission. The public can participate in several ways. Prior to a meeting, written comments about agenda items may be submitted to staff, and during the meeting, there are two opportunities for members of the public to participate. First, during the verbal communications period, an individual may speak on any topic that is not on the agenda. Second, during the public hearing portion of tonight's meeting, any member of the public may speak about an agenda item. You will be advised of the times when to speak on each item, on the one single item that we have tonight. If you wish to address the Commission tonight during the verbal communications portion or a public hearing agenda item, please raise your hand on Zoom, or for those here in person, complete a yellow speaker card and give it to a staff member. When you are called to speak, please come up to the podium and speak directly into the microphone. You can adjust it as needed, as this meeting is being recorded. Please state your name and address for the record or indicate that you are speaking anonymously. You will have 3 minutes to speak. We will now begin with the verbal communications portion of the meeting, during which members of the public are invited to address the Commission on any issue that is not on the agenda for tonight's meeting. Staff will announce when your 3-minute time limit is up. I have one speaker card for Brown Act.
Okay, I'm coming in anonymously. Brown Act. I think you probably understand why I'm doing the Brown Act. I am speaking on from past experience. I was a general contractor. Bought I'm neutral, trying to be neutral on this, but I bought a large, over 2.2 acre lot off of the city of Cupertino. Built a house, and and I know there's legal issues. I have legal issues right now, but what I'm trying to say is, at the beginning, when you're doing this, and everybody, this is like, I'm asking why you're doing this as special. If there was any, really public, because I didn't see this in the newspaper or anything like that. So originally, because it's up on a hill, it'll echo down, and I built on a hill. And so, and you're dividing it. A lot of people are more than here are to be interested in this kind of deal. I'm not a public speaker. I'm just giving you a heads up to legal issues, because I also know, because I had, when developers get in and owners get in, everybody gets, and even the contractors get sued. So I'm just letting you know, heads up. That's, I'm just putting it out there. Thank you. Thank you all. Try to keep it nice.
Thank you. Are there any questions for the speaker? Are there any hands raised on Zoom?
There are not.
Okay. We will now begin with we will now move on to our public hearing, starting with item number 1. Consider a request for approval for the subdivision of 1 lot into 12 lots with a vesting tentative map, construction of a new single-family residence on each lot, site work requiring a grading permit, and removal of large protected trees under Senate Bill 330 on vacant property zoned RC. located at 178 Twin Oaks Drive, APN 532-16-006, architecture and site applications S-24-023 through 032, and S-24-059. Vesting tentative map application M-24-013 and mitigated negative declaration application ND-25-001. An initial study and mitigated negative declaration have been prepared. Property owner applicant is Larry Dodge. Before the staff report, can I ask for a show of hands of commissioners that visited the site? And are there any disclosures from anyone? I would like to make a disclosure that I am familiar with the area and know some people that live in this neighborhood because I grew up here and still live in town. So, but it will not prevent me from being able to make a decision tonight. I will still be able to make an impartial decision. So that being said, Ms. Walters will be presenting the staff report this evening.
Thank you, Chair, and good evening. Erin Walters, Senior Planner. Before you this evening is a request to subdivide the 17.5-acre vacant lot located at 178 Twin Oaks Drive into 12 lots through a vesting tentative map. The applicant is requesting approval of multiple architecture and site applications to construct 12 two-story single-family homes and associated site work requiring a grading permit. Of the 12 single-family homes, 3 are designated to be affordable, representing 25% of the total units. These units would be for sale, BMP units restricted to low-income households. The project also includes a request to remove 223 protected trees. 12 trees are large protected per town code. This project is being processed under SB 330, and the project qualifies for 5 incentives and unlimited waivers under the density bonus law. And the applicant has also invoked builder's remedy. The project's underlying zoning is RC, which would not support the proposed density. The applicant is utilizing builder's remedy for the general planned land use, designation, zoning, and density. The town is applying R110 zoning standards to this project. Primary access to the subdivision would be provided by a 20-foot wide private street with a cul-de-sac connecting to Twin Oaks. A 20-foot wide emergency vehicle access would extend south to the site to Brookacres Drive, providing secondary emergency access consistent with the fire department standards. A private driveway will be accessed off of Sierra Vista Court, which will provide access to Lot 10. The town requested the applicant meet all the town's objective standards. However, the applicant has requested incentives and waivers allowed through state laws. The applicant has requested 4 incentives through state density bonus law, which include not installing story poles and netting, not providing sidewalks, not providing trails, and not providing open space easements. The applicant has also requested 58 different waivers as summarized in page 13 of the staff report. The applicant has provided written justification, which can be found in Exhibit 5. An initial study was prepared for the project, and it included a number of project-level technical studies. All technical reports were peer-reviewed by the town and prepared by the town's consultants. The initial study concluded that the project will not have a significant impact on the environment with the adoption of the M&D and the mitigation monitoring and reporting program to mitigate potential impacts to less than a significant level. An EIR was therefore not required. 18 mitigation measures are included in the MMRP and conditions of approval, which are in Exhibit 3. The M&D did not have to be recirculated as there were no major modifications that were identified after the public review. Minor changes are described in the errata sheet, which is found in Exhibit 14. There are 2 addendums this evening, as well as a desk item that were distributed for this item. And this concludes staff's report. Staff, as well as the town's environmental consultants from Rainey, the town's traffic consultants, and outside legal counsel are available to support your discussion. And now I'm going to turn it over to the town attorney, who will provide background on the regulatory framework.
Thank you. I'm Gabrielle Whelan, town attorney, and there are a number of different state housing laws that apply to this project. And so I've prepared a brief PowerPoint to go over the applicable laws so that everybody has the framework. And also available on Zoom is Nazanin Zalehi with the law firm of Goldfarb and Littman. And the law firm of Goldfarb and Littman has been assisting the town with its review of the various Senate Bill 330 planning applications that have come in. So I'm ready for the first slide. There are 4 major laws that are implicated by this project, and I'll discuss them in turn. The first is Senate Bill 330. The second is the State Housing Accountability Act. The third is State Density Bonus Law. And the fourth is the California Environmental Quality Act. Next slide, please. Senate Bill 330 authorizes applicants to submit what's called a preliminary application. And once that preliminary application has been submitted, the applicant vests to whatever development standards were in place at the time the application was submitted. And there are 17 things that are required for the preliminary application to be deemed submitted. And applicants who meet those 17 criteria will vest. And so this applicant vested at a time prior to certification of the town's housing element. And so as a result, this applicant is eligible to use what's called the builder's remedy, which I'll get into later. Next slide, please. Pursuant to Senate Bill 330, the town is limited to 5 public hearings on any SB 330 project. And tonight's hearing will constitute the first of those 5. Next slide, please. So this project vested to the development standards in place when it submitted its preliminary application. And in addition to SB 330, the project is using state density bonus law and the builder's remedy. Next slide, please. The State Housing Accountability Act is the statute that contains what's colloquially called the builder's remedy. It's codified at Government Code Section 65589.5. And it provides that local agencies cannot apply objective standards that would render qualified housing projects infeasible. And interpretations of the term infeasible mean both physically impossible and economically infeasible. A project will qualify if it has a sufficient amount of low-income housing as a component of it. The requirement is that it be 20% affordable to low-income households. This particular applicant is proposing a project that has 25% of the units affordable to low-income households. Next slide, please. And so also there are 3 ways that a project can be deemed an eligible housing development project. The first of those is that it's a project for residential units only, which this project is, so it therefore qualifies. Next slide, please. And we've discussed the fact that 20%, more than 20% of the units will be low income, so it qualifies on that basis to use the Housing Accountability Act. Next slide. And so the town does have the ability to apply its objective development standards so long as those standards will not render the project infeasible. And so the question often comes up, what is an objective development standard? And it needs to be a standard that's consistent with the town meeting its regional housing needs allocation, and it has to be applied to facilitate development at the density that's proposed. Next slide, please. It can't be a subjective determination. It needs to be something that's based on a written, uniformly applied standard. Next slide, please. The Housing Accountability Act also goes into what it means for a local agency to disapprove a housing development project. And the definition is broader than simply voting no on a housing proposal. It can also be not meeting the town's statutory deadlines for making a decision. And it can also mean imposing a condition of approval that would render a project infeasible. Next slide, please. So the town, pursuant to the statute, the town does bear the burden to show that the condition of approval will not render the project infeasible. And the town makes this determination based on the preponderance of the evidence standard, meaning that the evidence in favor of it not rendering the project infeasible outweighs evidence on the other side. Next slide, please. The Housing Accountability Act does have a number of grounds upon which a local agency can deny a builder's remedy project or impose a condition that renders it infeasible. The first would be that the town had an adopted housing element and has met its share of the regional housing needs allocation in all income categories proposed in the project. The town at this point has not met its regional housing needs allocation, so that first reason is inapplicable. The second reason would be that the project will have a specific adverse impact on public health or safety, and that determination needs to be based on an objective written standard. Next slide, please. The third basis for denying or rendering a project infeasible would be that it's required in order to comply with a specific state or federal law. The fourth reason would be that the project is on agricultural land without adequate water or wastewater treatment facilities. Next slide, please. And then the fifth reason would be that the development is inconsistent with both the zoning ordinance and general plan land use designation. However, this reason is only available to public agencies that had a certified housing element at the time that the project vested. Next slide, please. And then the sixth and final reason for denying would be if the project did not qualify as a builder's remedy project. And so based on the 2025 version of the statute, projects that are much more dense than are allowed in the new version of the statute will no longer qualify as a builder's remedy project. However, this project does not meet that density, and so it does qualify. Next slide, please. So are there any questions on Housing Accountability Act before I move to state density bonus law? Okay. So state density bonus law provides that applicants who are providing specified levels of affordability can get density bonuses, meaning they can build a denser project than they could otherwise, a specified number of incentives or concessions, and unlimited waivers. Pursuant to the law, applicants do not need to utilize the density bonus portion of the statute, meaning they don't have to build denser in order to take advantage of the ability to use incentives, concessions, and waivers. And so that's what this applicant has chosen to do. They're not seeking to increase the density, but they are seeking incentives, concessions, and waivers. Next slide, please. And so an incentive or concession can be any reduction in standards that results in identifiable and actual cost reductions to the project. Next slide, please. It can also be approval of mixed-use zoning, which is not applicable here, or any other thing that will result in a cost reduction. And an example of that would be the request not to comply with the story pole policy. Next slide, please. So the public agencies have several grounds upon which to deny a request for an incentive or concession. The first would be if the request does not result in identifiable or actual cost reductions to provide for affordable housing. The second reason would be if the proposal would have a specific adverse impact on public health or safety, and that impact cannot be mitigated without rendering the project unaffordable. Next slide, please. And the third grounds for denial would be if the requested incentive or concession were contrary to state or federal law. Next slide, please. The state density bonus statute also provides for waivers. And a waiver is defined as not applying any development standard that would have the effect of quote unquote physically precluding the project. And it's important to note that there is case law holding that means physically precluding the project as proposed, meaning that public agencies don't have the ability to redesign the project. Next slide, please. And then the final law that applies is the California Environmental Quality Act. And as Ms. Walters mentioned, the town's consultant did prepare an initial study. And based on the results of that initial study, the town determined that a mitigated negative declaration was appropriate. And what that means is there may be significant environmental impacts, but all of those impacts can be mitigated to less than significance. Next slide, please. And that concludes my presentation, and both I and Ms. Salehi are available to answer any follow-up questions.
Before we get questions to staff, I just wanted to, because tonight's meeting, there's a lot to cover, I just wanted to remind us all that our request that commissioners limit our questions to staff at this time to clarifying questions, something specific to the staff report, procedural questions, or something that might take a few minutes to answer that they can seek information on, but hold most of our bigger questions or some things that might open up some greater discussion until after we've heard from the applicant team. So Vice Chair Birch had a question, and then Commissioner Burnett.
It was just a clarifying question. So it has come up about, in a number of the letters we have about adhering to the objective standards. And I would just like for you to confirm that because of the density law, the waivers that they have requested, while they may be against our objective standards, they should be granted to them.
Yeah, I mean, what's interesting about this project is there's so many different laws that apply, and so there's going to be slightly different analysis based on each law. And so under the Housing Accountability Act, the town can apply its objective standards so long as it doesn't render the project infeasible. So that's like one level of inquiry. And then under density bonus law, the town has those 3 reasons for denying a requested incentive or concession. And the one that seems most apropos is the one that says it has to result in a cost reduction, and it has to be demonstrated that it would. And then for waivers, the question will be, would application of the town's objective standard physically preclude the project as proposed?
Commissioner Birch and then Commissioner Commissioner Burnett and then.
Thank you, Chair. So question, to follow up on the mitigated negative declaration approach preferred over an EIR, did this come up by the applicant, and was there a comment by staff, or was there recommendation by the staff given the complexity of this project?
So the determination is made by the town's environmental consultant on behalf of the town, and representatives from Rainey are here if you have more questions about that determination. Many applicants do choose to do an environmental impact report. They will ask the town, they'll say, even though I qualify for a mitigated negative declaration, I would like to do an environmental impact report. And under those circumstances, the town will prepare an environmental impact report.
Thank you.
Just to follow up on that. So I know there was an EIR referenced in the materials in a few places. I think there's an EIR dating back to about 2017, and then there's some old correspondence that seem to have been related to prior engagement of agencies going back around that time. So I guess my question is I think I know the answer, but just for clarity, the EIR is not part of this consideration at all, and does the ISMND stand completely on its own?
So in order to make its recommendation to the town council, as you know, the planning commission will have to make a determination on the CEQA. And so the commission's being asked to make a determination on the CEQA that was presented tonight, that will be presented tonight, which is the mitigated negative declaration.
And then just for clarity, since affordable housing is so relevant to so many parts of this builder's remedy application, I think I saw in the file what the applicant's opinion is on what the minimum required affordable percentage is on this project. I didn't see staff. Maybe it was in the staff report and I missed it. So What is the minimum affordable housing percentage required?
It would be 20%. In this case, the applicant's providing 25%.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Are there any other questions for staff at this time? No? Okay. We will now open the public portion of the public hearing on item number 1 and give the applicant an opportunity to address the commission for up to 5 minutes. I believe that Mr. Foley will be speaking on behalf of the applicant first. Thank you.
That's correct. Good evening, Planning Commission. It's nice to see you. It's been a little bit since I've had the pleasure of being up here. Jim Foley from Pennant Properties. I'm representing the Dodge family as the applicant and the property owners. Thank you for taking the time to have this special meeting for us this close to the holidays and the end of the year. First, I wanted to thank the town staff, town attorney Gabrielle, town manager Chris, Joel, Sean, Aaron, and the planning team, the engineering team as well. All played a big role in getting this application to where it is. It's been a long time. I think we submitted the preliminary application 2 years ago, December of 2023. Just to give a little background on the project, the Dodge family have been stakeholders in Los Gatos for generations. Bob Dodge began this Surrey Farms development in the early 1950s. This final phase, the Surrey Farms Estates, is the culmination of a lifetime of Los Gatos serving developments, neighborhood developments by the Dodge family. A similar project was brought forward in 2018 and went all the way to town council for approval, but was not approved because at that time the property was in the Williamson Act. The Williamson Act for this particular property expired early this year in January of 25. The Dodgers were disappointed at that time that the project did not get approved and they would have to wait a little bit longer, and that's what brings us here today. A couple of other notes just to kind of remember and keep in mind while you guys are making your deliberations. Staff has worked tirelessly on this project, provide a very detailed framework for you to hopefully provide a positive recommendation to the town council, which we're requesting. This project is going to bring some of the first new affordable units for sale in town since, I think, Bella Terra at the North 40. We have a couple of other projects coming forward from Summerhill and City Ventures that are going to deliver some units. And then there's a number of other SB 330 applications pending, and we don't know what's going to happen with those. And at this time, every unit counts in Los Gatos to count towards our housing element. So we think that this is a good use of the property to try to further that effort. We could have proposed an enormously more dense project and abused the builder's remedy, and that's not the intent of the Dodge family or anything that we would consider doing as their decades-long vision for the development of the property. This proposal is an elegant extension of the neighborhood as originally envisioned by the family. We attempted to comply with as many of the various potentially applicable development standards that could have been in place for the zoning for the project, as many as we could in order to deliver a first-class project. We have our project team here tonight that can elaborate a little bit more about that during the meeting. We also took into consideration a lot of comments, public comments that happened in the 2018 project, including road alignment, home orientation, headlight pollution, et cetera. Many of the objectors, as expected with every project, cite the inadequacy of the EIR and CEQA. However, believe me, there was tremendous additional study and updating of the technical reports and studies. It added a lot of time to what we anticipated for getting the application prepared for you. So yes, there was an EIR done in 2018. There is some background with CEQA. The ISMND was prepared, and there was a lot of effort put into that to make sure we got it right. For other members of the public that plan on speaking, just remember that this is a long time family, community stakeholders, and I think if a lot of us and you all were in their position, you'd want the same legacy for your children and your grandchildren. So we're excited to move through this process, hopefully deliver a first-class project, and have a fruitful conversation about this tonight. And we're all here. Our team is here to answer any questions you guys may have regarding the project. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Are there any questions for the speaker at this time, the applicant team at this time? Okay, thank you. We will now be moving on to public comment. So if you have not already filled out a speaker card, please do that and return it to staff. And if you are on Zoom, you can raise your hand now. When you are called to speak, please state your name and address for the record and know that you will have 3 minutes to make your comments. And then after that, commissioners will have an opportunity to ask any questions. So the first speaker card I have is for Cindy Clark. Yes, yes. You can come on up to the speaker and you can adjust the microphone so you're speaking into
Hi.
it.
Okay. All right. So my name is Cindy Clark. I live at 16326 West La Chiquita Avenue in Los Gatos. So I'm not in the neighborhood. I'm about 1.5 miles away. And first off, I want to thank all the commissioners for the hard work you've done and all you do for our town. We really appreciate it. I'm going to make 2 points tonight in opposition to the development plans. The first is, this all, of course, we had a really great presentation on the builder's remedy and SB 330. And all that is about building more housing. And yet the developer is asking to use 17 acres of rare wooded land to build 3, I'm going to say token, below market homes and 9 giant homes. These homes are for the very rich. We see this all the time. And I'm really afraid they're going to be like so many of the houses that are that big in Los Gatos. They're used for second and third houses. They're investment opportunities. These really aren't houses as SB 330 is thinking about. And I believe building this type of housing in this type of area is very wasteful and short-sighted. My second point is, if this development does proceed, and I hope it doesn't, the town should deny permits to remove the 223 protected trees. These are mostly oaks. They're large trees, they're old, and they're not replaceable at all. They are vital to healthy ecosystems. I'm an outdoor education docent at Mid-Peninsula Open Space. I teach 3rd, 4th, and 5th graders all about our ecosystems, all about these oaks and their roles. They're considered keystone species, and they support thousands of organisms, organisms that live in the ground, that live on the tree, and also live in Los Gatos, live in Cupertino, live in Sunnyvale, owls and such that return at night to roost, but they have to have those trees. These trees should also be preserved, and the developers set aside this land underneath them, including community walkways. And this is all these trees are located on the southwest portion, so it's not like they're everywhere. And it'd be really easy to do community paths. You can see an example of that at Kennedy Court, where they've got that open space. I think our town deserves more compensation for the loss of this rare heritage space than 3 token under-market homes. That's it.
Thank you. Are there any questions for the speaker? Thank you for speaking tonight.
Appreciate it.
Next speaker card I have is for Gus Hu.
Hi again. Listening in on just what was happening, I think that the public in general would want a road to connect the two because it's up in between 2 things and there's a lot of traffic going. So it would be better to have a loop in the 2 roads instead of the one at the Sierra, I don't know, the lower court, there's just 1 house. Another thing is when I built, I bought it off the Cupertino. It was 7 Springs, and it was a 400-acre lot that our neighbor sold. They kept 40 acres, and they gave the city 3 lots, and I bought one of the lots off it was a park, but I bought one of the lots off of them, and it would be better to do it that remedy if for the builders, instead of trying to low market, because this is things. And another thing was when I built, I designed a 3,500 square foot house, and it was too small for the neighborhood, and I had to double it because it was a big giant house. I didn't want a big giant house, but I had to build a big giant house. So it was one of those things. You can probably limit the size of the house, and even up. I mean, I'd up it's 14 acres. You can probably up it a couple houses. But if it was a loop around there, it's for safety reasons. I think that would be the most important thing. Even if nobody builds there, you should have a road connecting that high up to try to work a deal with the builders. Because he just said that they're family oriented and they looked for these long projects, and they're probably to build something up there. So a road between the two for safety issues is my biggest concern for the public. Thank you.
Thank you very much. The next speaker card I have is for John Whitkin.
Thank you, Commissioners. I'm John Whitkin, 188 Twin Oaks Drive, right next door to the development. And I've lived on Twin Oaks Drive on and off for 70 years now, and there's a reason that hillside has never been developed. It's a hillside with an oak forest and a Ross Creek feeder stream at the base. It is not feasible for subdivision for multiple home tracts. All these similar developments have had issues in California. When we cut down 250 trees, move 200 loads of dirt, and pave over a riparian corridor, what can we anticipate? Last year, the hillside was recategorized as a high fire danger zone. And eventually in California, for all of us that have lived here, we know we'll have a flood or an earthquake or a fire. And these altered landscapes, they just ultimately fail. We will experience, as before, landslides, massive property damage, and just a major safety hazard. It's just not safe to build these structures for $6 million homes. And I don't think that's going to reduce any of the housing crisis in California. Let's keep Los Gatos safe and beautiful. We need existing open space to remain. Thank you for your consideration.
Thank you very much. Are there any questions for the speaker?
Thank you.
Commissioner Burnett has a question for you. Mr. Whitman, sorry.
I thank you. So the creek runs in the back of your property, and your property actually has the most exposure to the ramifications of the creek and the water and that drainage. I know they've put in drainage, areas there, but can you comment on that? Is that one of your concerns, flooding on your property?
We've had flooding twice in the last 30 years, and it brings dirt and silt down from the hillside, and it's also overflowed at the Dodge property where it goes into a culvert. So we've had multiple experiences where we've had to take dirt out of the pool and similar issues. Thank you.
Thank you for that.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thanks.
The next speaker card I have is for Bill Maleko.
Hello. My name is Bill Maleko. I live at 189 Longmeadow Drive, where we've lived there for 45 years. We're adjacent to the proposed at the border with Hillbrook, where this property drains its hillside onto our property, which is an open culvert. Our major concern is privacy, trees, noise, and the drainage. From a privacy standpoint, I'd prepared a simulation, or a visual simulation, showing how it would look like with these houses, but I now understand that we can't show them visually, so I'll distribute these somehow. But the elevation of our backyard's 407 feet, while the base elevation of the houses that are going to be built are 430 feet, and that's the base of those elevations. So these new homes are going to look down into our backyard and into our windows. It's going to be a major privacy concern. From a trees standpoint, the applicant's rendering on the architectural submittal shows 35 trees that are supposed to be installed. These are between lots 5 and 6 and my house and the Fordyce house, which is next door. When reviewing the plans, if you look at it, they're only going to install 7. So there's a discrepancy between what the rendering is and what they're actually planning to do. They're also, from a tree standpoint, they're removing 6 protected trees on these 2 lots. Their reasoning for removing these trees is the retention of the tree restricts the economic enjoyment of the property and creates an unusual hardship for the property owner by severely limiting the use of the property. These trees are along the property line with Hillbrook. They don't interfere with anything and don't interfere with the construction. You know, if you do approve this, we ask that you, from a privacy standpoint for us, require the developer to add these 35 trees. The other problem we have is noise. When Hillbrook was preparing their studies to get their CUP, the report stated that the current sound level at our home was at the threshold of unacceptable. Surely, with the accumulation effect of Hillbrook in the proposed houses, it'll put the sound above the unacceptable level. The third problem is drainage. This hillside drains entirely towards our property. Currently there's a catch basin at the corner, which is about 80% capacity. That will surely overflow with the drainage that's going to be created. It's also going to be the other problem is a retention basin.
Thank you. So are there any questions? Did you have a question? Okay. Did you have a question? Okay. Commissioner Burnett.
Oh.
Thank you. So you did mention, just to follow up on the catch basin, which is in your back right yard now, that is usually, it runs at an 80% capacity, you're saying? Is that most of the time, or?
Well, that's during heavy rains, yeah.
During heavy rains.
Right. I mean, if you look at the concrete on it, you can see where the water standing is about 80%.
Right, and your home, then they want to add an addition water retention pond behind your property, and which is 6 feet below your
well, the retention pond, the bottom of that retention pond, I think it's like 4 or 5 feet above our yard. During the summer months, our backyard is soggy. We've had to add drainage in there to drain it. During the winter, we've got standing water in our backyard.
Okay, I just wanted that clarification. Thank you.
Sure.
And then I had a question too for you, Mr. Maleko. The trees, you mentioned the removal of the protected trees in the 7 versus the 35 on the plans. Were you, and then you made a request about them. Can you just clarify what you would? Well,
on their rendering, they show 35 trees between their houses and our property.
Yes.
That's going to create a lot of It'll solve some of the noise problem that's created from these houses, and it'll keep the visibility of them from viewing into our backyard and into our windows.
Okay. And then did you have any preferences on the types of trees or species, or no just
not
something
off the top of my head.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
Thanks. Okay. No other questions? Perfect. Okay. The next speaker card I have is for Monica Hersey.
Hello, my name is Monica Hersey. I live at 185 Longmeadow Drive. A house separates me and the Malikos and 2 houses to the Fordyces, so we're about 3 houses from the proposed development. I actually face Twin Oaks, and I don't have a lot of data in front of me to present to you. It's more of a heart. comment that I want to say. I moved here in 2011. We've launched 3 kids from Los Gatos. Our final one we just launched in October to Seattle, and we're trying to find every reason to stay in California. And unfortunately, a proposal like this tends to keep people like us from retiring here. I want to paint a picture that in any given day, if you're night or day, if you're in my house or in my yard, there are owls, coyotes, deer, rabbits, foxes. I have all this. This is all on film because we have a security camera. There are now turkeys. I've seen a wildcat once, hawks and quails, and yes, the occasional snake. And I think about that all the time whenever Ms. Fordyce brings us up to date on this proposal, because unfortunately that's all going to go away. The hawks aren't going to be in the sky anymore because the trees are going to be gone, and I'm not going to hear the coyotes yipping in the middle of the night because their habitat is going to be destroyed. And it worries me. And I understand that the state needs housing. And I'm a teacher, so I understand that we need affordable housing. But I tend to agree with the former speaker that is a second home housing. Are these housings going to produce ADUs on each of them? Are they then going to be subdivided and sold as individual lots, which I've seen happen in this town? And it frightens me. And it, frankly, I think that sometimes, my husband is a little bit more cynical than I am, and he often says to me, well, we have no control over this. And I like to think that we do have control over this, being property owners. And I love living in this town, and I hope that you do take into consideration me and my neighbors' comments today. I also worry about safety and access to the site. We have a young man who is autistic on Long Meadow Drive, and I've watched him grow up, and he often stands in the middle of the street. And I wonder sometimes, when we have all this housing going on, all this building, I worry about the children in our neighborhood and what's going to happen to them because access is so limited to their proposal. And that's about it. And thank you again for allowing me to comment this evening.
Thank you. Any questions for the speaker? Thank you very much for your comments. Next, I have Jill Fordyce.
Hi, I'm Jill Fordyce. We live at 191 Long Meadow Drive. I've lived there since 1999, and we've raised our 5 children there. And we've enjoyed both the peacefulness of the natural hill and the wildlife behind us, all that Monica just spoke of, as well as the lovely, vibrant, thriving Surrey Farms neighborhood, kids playing in the street. It's an old-fashioned neighborhood. It's one of the main reasons we moved there. The backdrop of the beautiful hill and the beautiful construction that was done by the Dodge family. When we were deciding to move to Surrey Farms in 1999, we went to the town to inquire about the likelihood of the hill being developed. We're in the court next to the Malikos and the Witkins, so we abut the project specifically. The clerk pointed to the property on the map and said it's resource conservation space and it won't likely be developed in your lifetime. So in 2018, the applicant here filed the non-renewal for the Williamson Act, and we are now facing a new reality. It's no longer resource conservation space. We have all these builder's remedy laws, and we understand that the times have changed, not only because of the loss of the Williamson Act protection, but because of this environment that we're living in. The laws that the applicant relies on for affordable housing, it should be clear that it's a 12-unit development, 9 of which are large luxury homes directly behind the Surrey Farms neighborhood. And there are 3 small in one, they share one driveway at the bottom of the unit, at the bottom of the development, affordable housing units. There still exists an obligation to the community to ensure that the proposed development is environmentally vetted appropriately for the scope of the project and that does not put our health and safety at risk. We request that the project is denied because it would result in specific adverse impact to us. We spoke in our letters and also in videos that we have sent and photos that we're worried about the risk of wildfire and appropriate evacuation from the one way in, one way out from Twin Oaks to Long Meadow to Kennedy, or even if you go out Brookacres, we're on 2-lane roads. There's a possibility of erosion, mudslide, and landslide on the project site, which is in a geologic hazard zone. I am right below that. It exposes the surrounding area to the risk of flooding, water quality degradation, water pollution, and harms associated with the proposed bioretention plan that, again, will be right behind my home. Each of these risks are acknowledged in the negative declaration, but the mitigation for each is vague, uncertain, deferred, and potentially unenforceable. I wish I had more time, but I would encourage you to look at the letters that we submitted. They're very detailed in what is required and what is lacking under mitigation for fire, for the geologic hazard zone, and for the potential to pollute and flood our property. And I'm happy to answer any questions. Thank you for listening.
Thank you for speaking tonight. Are there any questions for the speaker? No. Okay, thank you very much. Next, I have Craig Fordyce.
Hello, Craig Fordyce. I'm at 191 Longmeadow Drive. So an EIR is required, in our opinion. The fate of an undeveloped rural Los Gatos hillside, home to protected trees, species, and a riparian corridor requires at a minimum a detailed understanding of the environmental impact of the proposed development. In this case, we have not been given the necessary information to have such an understanding. Housing law does not waive or reduce CEQA review. Compliance with CEQA is mandatory and independent of zoning or housing authorization. The MND approach suggests environmental review is secondary to entitlement, which is legally incorrect. The MND relies on an outdated, uncertified EIR from 2017. Natural environments change over the course of the years. Species appear and disappear and are not fixed in time. The proposal is not the same as the one considered in 2018. One key difference is the scope of the development, 13% increase. The lots are different, the number of homes is different, the home sites are different, the ingress and egress is different. An uncertified EIR cannot legally be relied upon for the adoption of a MND. See letters submitted by the Sierra Club, the Santa Clara Valley Bird Alliance, and the San Francisco Bay Regional Water Control Board each cite multiple issues that were not adequately addressed by the MND. The Bird Alliance and the Sierra Club note that because the project is located within an ecologically sensitive transition zone between existing development and the natural hillside habitat, a preparation of an EIR is essential. The Sierra Club and the Bird Alliance found substantial evidence that the project may result in significant hydrological and biological impacts that are not adequately disclosed, analyzed, or mitigated. The Sierra Club and the Bird Alliance have supplied a fair argument that the project may have a significant environmental impact, including the following issues. The MND fails to adequately assess significant and irreversible impacts to biological resources, including native woodland habitat, wildlife movement corridors, nesting birds, and special status pollinators in the Ross Creek watershed, and are known to support raptors, migratory songbirds, and oak-associated wildlife. The MND removes a substantial number of mature coast live oaks and associated understory vegetation. It does not quantify total tree loss, assess habitat fragmentation, or evaluate impacts to wildlife corridor functionality across the Ross Creek drainage interface.
Thank you. Are there any questions for the speaker? No. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Next, I have Chris Bayorsk.
Good evening. Chris Bayorek, 120 Clover Way, in the community nearby that proposed development. My main concern is centered on the fact that the property as proposed, the development as proposed, clearly exceeds the drainage capability of that land. And the mitigating requests are to build basically at least 3, possibly more, wetlands, ponds, to catch the effluents from drainage of that property. And ponds are a severe health concern. With the presence of West Nile virus in our community, and the fact that ponds breed mosquitoes and mosquitoes transfer that virus, I think it would be extremely challenging to maintain adequate safety, health safety factors via these various ponds proposed on the property. I don't know if you've read the report. It's 1,242 pages long, but I call to your attention page 27. It lists in a very long paragraph at least 3, possibly 4 proposed wetlands. They call them bioretention basins, but they're basically proposing wetlands to capture the effluents. And those wetlands will breed mosquitoes, and you cause the danger of having those mosquitoes spread a West Nile virus. It's adjoining to a school, and it's adjoining to several residential areas that surround that property. I don't think the town would like to be responsible for allowing the formation of such wetlands. The second concern I have to compound the problem is that the proposal is very fuzzy about who's going to be responsible for maintenance of those wetlands. The town is not going to want to maintain them, right? They talk about applicant being responsible, the owner will be responsible. Who's the owner of a wetland? Have they carved out specific parcels that contain the wetlands so that somebody is responsible in a well-defined manner for those wetlands? No. The various homeowners will be stuck with having to deal with this, and the consequence of that will be that this will end up right on your laps, the town's laps, because not only will those homeowners be concerned about dealing with those maintenance issues, but the entire surrounding community will be responsible. So I think the scope of the development needs to be downsized to avoid the dependence on these wetlands.
Thank you. Are there any questions for the speaker? No. Okay, thank you very much for your comments. Next speaker I have is Lee Quintana.
Good evening, Lee Quintana. I'm here not to speak on the project, but to speak on the environmental review. Currently, I serve on the Historic Preservation Committee, but I am not representing the Historic Preservation Committee here. I am relying on 15 years of experience working for the City of San Jose doing environmental review. There were 2 things that were paramount in the review of projects. One was the purpose of environmental review was to provide decision makers with adequate information to make informed decisions. That's adequate information as to the potential significant impacts and the mitigation to mitigate those impacts. That's necessary for them to make informed decisions. The second thing that was always paramount was to make our documents bulletproof, which means that we achieved the first purpose and provided all the information, the studies, and the mitigation that flowed from the studies before a document was released. In this case, as you have lots of letters from professionals, there appears to be a certain incompleteness in those studies and deferred mitigation and lack of consultation with agencies that have jurisdiction over lands in Los Gatos. Once you approve a project, and then you go back and do your studies and consultations, you're limited in many cases in what you can do. And you may not be able to achieve full mitigation. So it's really important to have those studies up front. And for that reason, I would not support approving the mitigated negative declaration. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Are there any questions for the speaker? No. Next I have is Jan Schwartz.
Hi, I'm Jan Schwartz, and I live at 15966 Cerro Vista Drive. So I'm on the other side of the hill. And I have concerns from our neighbors who are on, we will have 1 or 2 houses on our side, more will be on the others. I am concerned for my neighbors. I've heard the flooding, the landslides, the mosquitoes. I think there's significant risks. But my concern, as a speaker talked about before, is the wildlife that we have here. And we've got a riparian corridor next to the library that the town's put a lot of effort into building. We have a natural one already up there. We have a den of coyotes. I also sit out at night and listen to them. Western screech owls, bobcats, red foxes. I saw 18 turkeys when I came home last night. Cooper's hawks, lots of deer. We have a lot of wildlife that's going to disappear. I'm in Los Gatos. I love Los Gatos. I've been here since 1975. And I know progress moves on. I've seen the North 40. We've seen certainly a lot of development. But I do hope that we can maintain the wildlife and riparian corridor that we have right now. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Are there any questions? No, thank you very much. The next speaker card I have is Ann Griffin.
Ann Griffin, 158 Twin Oaks Drive. I've lived in my home for over 50 years. I have had a flooded backyard due to the Ross Creek flooding twice, and I am up the road from the property to be developed. I'm not here to talk about regulations and the necessity of housing. I see in my home, I am a caretaker of oak trees that have been passed on to me, and I hope I can give them to the people who follow me. And the thought of, if I had to tear one down, you would probably penalize me. And I am the caretaker and doing the best I can to see that they continue to another generation. My concern is safety. The street of Longmeadow is a Twin Oaks, Clover, and Blueberry travel on to Longmeadow to exit, the one big exit for all of these homes. We are adding probably 2 cars to every home, most of which will go through Longmeadow. I counted 4 cars parked on Longmeadow at 7 o'clock tonight. It is a narrow street, an adequate street. No street lights, no sidewalks. And during the day, if you were to travel on Longmeadow, you would probably see 4 or 5 landscape trucks, cars parked, service people, children riding bikes, people walking dogs. I am concerned about safety. I live at the end of Twin Oaks, and I would like an emergency vehicle be able to come to my home if I needed it. And if you traveled at any given time, you have to stop and let a car pass as you continue to enter or exit your property. So I'm not here to talk about anything, but we have a lot of people enjoying our community, but safety is an issue that we have to continue. If we increase the cars, you remove people from walking, children riding bikes, and the integrity of our community would be limited. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your comments. Are there any questions for the speaker? Are there any hands raised on Zoom?
There are no hands raised currently on Zoom.
Okay. I do not have any speaker cards, and since there are no hands raised on Zoom, we will return to the applicant so that the applicant team can provide closing remarks. You will have 3 minutes, followed by questions.
Thank you, and thanks to all the people that took their time to come and speak and provide letters. We reviewed a lot of the letters. A lot of these topics aren't new. There are some of the things that informed what we tried to create for the project and what was provided. Just to pick off a couple of the things that we just heard, and then you guys may have some of the similar questions, and we've got our team here to delve into those further if they require it. The trees by Hillbrook School and the screening, I think we have our consulting arborist, hopefully on Zoom, if that comes up. That's certainly something to look at. Safety and access, there's extensive language in the conditions of approval about best management practices, safety, access during construction, everything else. So I don't think there's any intention of the project with the limited number of houses to create any unsafe environment in this extension of the neighborhood. The bioretention areas and those concerns, I mean, they're engineered, they're widely accepted. It's all gone through the process. I don't think this is anything different from what is typical, and we can elaborate on drainage and the stormwater and what those bioretention areas may look like. There's a lot of language and conditions of approval, the requirements for CC&Rs, who's going to manage them, ongoing access, review, proactive submitting of reporting to the town of Los Gatos. So the idea of how we created that and the drainage for the neighborhood was well thought out. As far as the wildlife and those concerns, we still have this ephemeral swale through the site that is kind of the main feature, I think, where you're going to find wildlife and protected areas. We've stayed away from that. That photo doesn't really do it justice, but there's still a lot of that being preserved with this project, if we want to get into the details. And then on the matter of CEQA, we talked about it before. We're not here to debate the merits of EIRs. I just want to reiterate, a lot of effort went in. Rainey spent a lot of time taking prior information, new information, updating, making sure all the technical studies were adequate for what we were trying to do. And I think they did a good job. And, I just don't think everything needs an EIR. Are we going to start doing EIRs for ADUs? I don't know. CEQA seems to be changing daily in California. But I think the information that's provided, whatever you want to call it, is really good and thorough information that should help you make an informed decision on what we're proposing. And if there are more questions, we'll be here. We have the team ready.
Commissioner Burnett.
Thank you. So one question, it seems you didn't meet with any of the neighbors. I know that that isn't needed, but that would have been a good gesture, I would think.
I've had a lot of meetings with a lot of neighbors for a lot of projects over time. Specifically, we had a lot of information from 2018. I think it was very clear what a lot of the concerns were, and this is a different kind of project. We have different laws and tools that we're using, and we just chose to take the information that we had, rely on that, and move on. We've had project signs for over a year up there with contact information, my cell phone number, and I never heard from one neighbor either.
May I follow up? Although this project is 62,000 square feet, and the one you're talking about was 55,000, so surely there was more questions around this project. So I would think the neighbors there'd be even more reason to want to chat with them. And not that you needed to.
Yeah, it was just sort of just a decision for how we were going to bring the project forward.
So another question I have: the size of the basins on average, because every home has one. I was just wondering, what's the average size there? Is it a graded basin, or how? Because my concern is the water, the drainage. I hear from the neighbors there's a lot of concern over that issue, so.
Right. I'll probably ask our civil engineer to kind of weigh in on that a little bit, but we've seen some of these comments provided prior and in current letters. And I'm not a civil engineer, so I'll let them answer it a little bit more. But, you know, the general notion is that we think that now we have engineered solutions that are going to treat and direct drainage, like project-wide, whether it, you know, the retention basins are just a portion of it. So it's possible that we're going to even improve the situation and be able to catch and divert runoff drainage from winding up in swimming pools or whatever else it may be. I've got HMH here if you have more specifics.
Yeah, so Zephy Menes with HMH Civil Engineer on the project. Your question regarding the sizing of the bioretention cells, it is based off how much water is actually going to it. So it's tributary area. It's roughly about 3%. So it does vary based off of what is tributary to it. If there's a concern about water standing in it, that is not the intent. We are following the local county and state guidelines to be able to treat the water. The intent is for the water to be able to be treated before it flows out into the waterways and then eventually out to the bay.
And is the homeowners association or the homeowner, are they going to be responsible for the remove of debris and any issues?
Yeah, there's maintenance requirements and reporting and inspection requirements that have been provided as part of the conditions of approval.
Other questions, but I'd like to continue. Okay, so another, the concern over why you wouldn't want to put in trails. I know that would that be too costly for your project? Would it impact your ability to have your low-income housing? I mean, that's usually what it's tied to.
Yes, the question of cost is always kind of on top of mind, and everything is so costly to do now that I'm sure you hear time and time again, especially where we live. And, you know, getting the pieces to the puzzle with land values, construction costs, costs of financing, carrying costs, and everything else to align, it's very thin. And having land dedicated is a cost. Having the ongoing management of it is a cost. We created the project in a way where there are CC&Rs and there are maintenance obligations, but there is no homeowners association, which is also a cost to manage and something that you can have challenges going forward. So again, just based on the vision for the project, the kind of project we wanted to bring forward at this time, it just wasn't a consideration generally for those reasons.
Okay, thank you. Just one quick one.
Can I follow up? I have a follow-up question directly to that. So the trail, the trails, that is, you did not consider that cost then, is what you're saying?
We considered it a cost that would create the project, it to be too challenging to fund the project by adding public trails through the project. And the way that we proposed the project, it wasn't required, so
okay.
We did not design it that way.
And then what about, okay, thank you. Back to you, Sue.
Okay, and a quick follow-up. With Larry Cannon's report, our town architect, and I know you do not have to follow his sort of recommendations, but there were a few. I know you would respond to maybe a color, some kind of color suggestion on the homes. That was in the report. And that was one thing you sort of agreed to, that you would be open to maybe color suggestions.
Yeah, we have our architect team here too. He worked directly with Larry on some of his comments. If you've got specific questions regarding architecture or color or recommendations.
Yeah, that was one, but the slim windows, I noticed all the homes have very slim windows. So that was one comment by Larry Cannon. And the second one, which I sort of agreed with, there was no window trim. So the homes are very, just from an architectural standpoint. I know you don't have to follow any of those guidelines, but I was just...
Right. I think, I don't know if Chris wants to get up and just talk. Chris Hall is our architect from Platform Architecture, and we chose him for many reasons, including his vision for the custom home neighborhood and whether some of those design elements are things that are in his vision, our vision, the public's vision, a marketable vision, certainly relied on him. So do you have a specific question you want to know, if we want to change a color or a window trim, or?
Well, I know in the report that your answer was that you would be open to color suggestions, because I think his comment was it was all like one color. The homes were, it was sort of need a little bit more diversity, but colors that would work in a hillside.
Sure. I mean, if there's a proposal, I'd look to Chris to help me determine whether or not it's something that's going to fit, you know, in with the kind of the overall look and feel of the neighborhood that we're proposing.
Okay.
Okay, Vice Chair, or first, sorry. I think.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I did want to follow up on some of the questions about drainage, and maybe Priscilla can pop back up here again. Specifically, just some kind of general set-the-table questions. So that we have a creek going through the site, but we also have an ephemeral drainage, which are two different features, I understand. So is there any function to the storm drain system that has anything to do with Ross Creek, or is it just passing through the site separate? And
Essentially, yes, it's separate. And so what we have done too is be able to work with the environmental consultant, identify the riparian age so that we are staying out of it, so that it can be separate. I know there was a concern about removing some water from the creek itself, so we have implemented a swale to be able to have that water be reintroduced, and so it's not being diverted because of it. And also understanding that there were past issues with drainage to the neighboring properties. What we are doing with our subdivision is helping to alleviate that by taking that water away into the storm drain system. Yes, goes into the biocell per local regulations for treatment of water to take out the contaminants before it goes to the storm drain system. But yes, all that was taken into account.
Just real quick, a recap there. So we've got the creek, and then we've got the ephemeral drainage, which is a separate swale. And you're saying that, and correct me if I missed it. So there's the drainage coming off the swale, which I know is intermittent and probably driven by storm events. Is that being incorporated into, that doesn't go to the creek then, right? That goes into the storm retention system. Okay. In terms of overall picture with respect to storm, what's the pre and post condition? I mean, can you characterize whether post-project we're dealing with net increase, net decrease?
So I don't have those numbers with me, but we can look at that and get that back to you.
Okay. I do have some other questions about the ephemeral drainage, but they're going to be more for the environmental consultant, so I can hold on those for now. Or I can jump into them.
I would say that you should ask if there's anything relevant to that you want to hear back from the applicant team, because once that's closed.
Got it. Okay. I consider the riparian area and the ephemeral drainage to be kind of an area of pretty big concern. Part of the reason why is we've got a letter in the file from Brian Wines with the regional board, which was a specific request to characterize that area under the possibility that it could be a wetland. And from what I'm seeing in the record, it doesn't look like anybody actually went to the trouble of truly defining that. And I've had some experience of doing this as a developer in the past, and I've had to go through some of this painful process associated with working with the Army Corps and Regional Board. So what I'm curious about is if there had been any analysis of that ephemeral drainage with respect to hydrophytic soils or plant species that are wetland characteristic plant species. And that's my first question.
Right. I think you were right the first time. That's a question for Rainey. They did kind of go through their process, and in their responses to Brian's letter, they talked about their efforts and what they thought. And we had some follow-up conversations with Brian on Zoom, kind of looked at the site. I think post his letter, he may have been oriented a little bit differently as far as up and downhill, and we kind of got all on the same page with him with what he was looking at. And then he further asked us for clarifications about where that ephemeral swale meets the roadway and what the condition is. We're set back 10 feet. That's what's required. There's a retaining wall towards the end of it. We kind of put together some exhibits for him to explain that to him. I don't think he was necessarily satisfied, so we're having an ongoing dialogue. But our position is that whatever we've gotten back from Rainey. We're in agreement with that, and we've completely avoided the area. The entire subdivision has been moved downhill, and there's a couple of lots sort of on either side of it, and where the, natural, visible, and then I guess even calculated delineation of the swale is kind of meets the road in between those two homes, and then it just goes up the hill back into hillside in the backyards of the homes. That's all I can kind of speak to.
Okay. Is there anyone from Rainey available to speak to the issue? Are they on Zoom? Are they here? Are they?
No, they're here.
Oh,
but
gotcha.
I don't know if
They're
we're
over
gonna
there.
get back and forth with the dialogue with the applicant and dialogue with consultants.
Okay, so hold off
yeah.
on that for now. Gotcha. Okay. Thank you.
Just as a follow up to that, I understand the cost of the story pole situation. Did your team at all contemplate possibly doing something alternative so that, when we went out and did a site visit, we would be able to determine exactly like where these lot lines are and where this is? Because we all did, and we all have different levels of experience with like environmental surveying and development. And just to be honest, it was difficult for us to know. Like, I don't feel like I necessarily have enough information to confirm that where I saw this, what I consider a wetland as an environmental scientist, is not going to be, is avoided. So was there any alternative considered? And if we are continuing this item, or in the future, would you be willing to put up some sort of, obviously not story poles, but some sort of indicators of delineation between lots and structures or anything, roadways?
Challenging question. So story poles are expensive, staking is expensive, visual simulations are very expensive. I wish I could go out there and meet with you guys and tour the project and have study sessions out there. That's also something that may or may not be allowed, which I've for a long time said isn't always that helpful. I think the plans are pretty clear. We're happy to try to do something more. I think, a week before we had determined or heard that there was going to be planning commission site visits. Can you get the site staked? Kind of last minute and challenging to try to do that, and also very costly. And it is a tricky site. It's a hillside site to get out there, and as you know, because you visited it. But we spent a lot of money with our architect trying to create a very good visual representation. This is part of it here. We also, I think, spent $18,000. The town required visual simulations for, I think, 4 photos that they gave us, and it's just really hard to get all that done, and it's very costly. So, as far as the part of your question, did we consider it? I mean, from a project perspective, yeah, we considered everything, and we thought we did a lot. There's just been a lot that's gone into this. As far as like kind of last minute doing site visits and staking and things, I guess it just didn't come together. I wish we could have created something more helpful.
Vice Chair Birch, and then
I have a follow-up to that, and then I have some questions for the civil engineer. Really, I think it would honestly be the corner of Lot 8 that needs to be staked, and clearly your civil engineer has gone out and done a layout. That would not be very expensive, and I think if they could just lay out the corner so that we could stand against those, I don't think the entire property needs to be staked, but I think that's the one that would help.
Okay.
And then, yeah, I've got some stormwater.
Yeah.
And drainage. Okay. My first question is on sheet 5.0. Do you have them?
I don't know.
Okay. It's this one. Okay. And it kind of maps out the different stormwater drains and the path. You said that it doesn't go into Ross Creek, but when you look at the path basically that goes past Lot 1, it actually looks like it goes into a storm drain at Ross Creek.
So I'd have to, I don't know if that sheet is up on
5.0. Yeah, okay. Okay, so we can wait a second on that. My other question comes to the way the other lots, basically 5, 6, 8, 10, and I think that's 7, feed into the existing large storm drain at the corner of the property. Was an assessment done on that storm drain, taking into account that now there is going to be, basically less open space, less open soil to absorb all that water that comes down, and that most of that water now is going to probably get diverted into that line? Has there been a study done on that?
Yeah, and my colleague actually just reminded me to your question prior, Mr. Sorty, what is the delta between pre and post runoff? And I believe that is maybe getting to your question right now. Because the site is in a hydromodification zone, we have looked at that pre and post condition to make sure that what is pre-construction and post-construction still is mitigated. We are providing that. So yes, that was taken into account with that calculation.
Okay, and so what you're saying by that is that existing 30, I think it's a 36-inch pipe, is adequate to pick up not only, what comes straight down from the ephemeral stream, but the additional water not being absorbed in the ground. That study has been done, and you're saying that pipe is adequate.
So what we have looked at is the site itself, how much water is tributary to the site. Hydromodification, we are installing a orifice to allow for the water to not exceed what is currently being discharged, and we've reviewed that with the town engineer.
So on this, I don't know how easy it would be to point this out, but on the bottom left corner, perfect. So essentially, if you look along the yellow path, the street, and you go past lot 1, there's a note that says, Valley Waters 110-foot floodplain easement. There is a catch basin or storm drain right down there. It is by DMAA to the left. Yep, right there where the cursor is. Yeah. However, it doesn't, I have no understanding of where that water actually then goes to. And it appears to be by the creek. So where does the water from the bioswales at lot 4, 9, 1, 11, 12, and 3 and 2 go to?
Mike, can you jump up here? Mike, can you jump up here? So I don't know if you got that, Mike.
I'm sorry, repeat it for me one more time, please.
All right. So if you take a look at the, bioswales, bioretention ponds, whatever you want to call them, that are for lots 4, 9, 1, 11, 12, 3, and 2. Those all kind of feed into some, storm drains that are in the street there. And then that line goes over towards the node of DMAA, and then it just ends. It doesn't really indicate where that water then goes to. Yep, there. Now keep going down down a bit.
So
all of it, right? Nope, right there. That's where it seems to end. There is no further line from that.
So this is all pervious area.
And if you look at the topography, obviously it's going down. There's no way it's going to the corner.
Storm drain system? Yeah. Okay. So the water that's tributary to here, this roadway, this hatch here is pervious pavement for water quality purposes. The water and subdrain go to this catch basin and out to this existing storm drain system. Are we understanding the question?
Well, into what existing storm drain system?
This line right here.
It's Ross Creek.
Yeah, so it's Ross Creek. So it is going into Ross Creek?
Yes.
Okay. All right, I have another question then about the bioretention ponds. There's a note in there that they're lined with an impervious liner. Why would you do that?
So the impervious liner, they're located to be able to allow the water to go through the media filter. We work with a geotechnical engineer to determine whether or not the soils are adequate enough to allow for water to be able to permeate through the existing soil type. So that's based off recommendations that we work with the geotechnical engineer based off of the current standards.
And were all of those studies then presented to the town engineer? Because my experience with those have been that they accumulate silt pretty quickly, and then those fill up and spill over.
And so there is a overflow that is built into it per the current standards that allow for the water. So it is intended to be able to treat the water in a subdrain. And in a high flow situation, there's an overflow. And through the operation and maintenance plan, there is a regularly scheduled maintenance of it.
Okay. Can I ask one? Okay. So I'm sorry, then I'm going to switch gears, but it's still for you guys. If you look at the back of lot 4 and 5, those properties, the backs of them, correct, yeah, are built up pretty high. Those retaining walls, they do step, but they go up about 12 feet. Correct. The existing properties on the other side are significantly lower than that, and I don't see any type of like water catch system or anything on the back sides of 4 and 5 that would catch any overflow water and divert it to the existing storm drain.
So all of this area here is pervious. Sorry. All of this area along back sides of both of the lots here are pervious. The water will infiltrate into the ground. This is not hardscape by any means. There is a treatment system here, and I think this treatment system here that ultimately will treat both of these lots. But back here, it will be landscape, et cetera, that allows any of the surface drainage to basically infiltrate the ground.
Did you do any type of study, like, you know how we have the 100-year rain out here that seems to like to happen more often than 100 years? That when an excessive rain, since that elevation is so high, to prove that we're not going to wind up now flooding neighbors' properties, that is enough pervious, I don't know, square footage for that amount of water?
So there's a, go ahead.
So we did do the calculations, but specific to that area that just focused on that, we do not have a calculation just for that strip. The way that we were looking to mitigate that and reduce the amount of water that is currently going to the neighbors is by grading these lots away from the neighboring property to help alleviate any of the overflow that was existing condition going that direction. So what we could do is look at having a earth swale in that location to be able to address your concern.
Okay. I'll give somebody else a chance. Come back.
Thank you, Chair. Pivoting quickly from water, I think you guys can probably sit down, to trees. I'm sure you heard many of the members of the public are concerned about trees, the removal of trees, relocation of trees. But I wanted to address two specifically. I think one neighbor indicated that there were trees on the Hillbrook School side that you indicated needed to be removed, and they seem to indicate were on the property edge and did not need to be removed. Wanted to get your thoughts on that. And then secondly, another neighbor indicated that there were trees that were going to either they disappeared from the plans or changed the plans, and mentioned 35 trees that should have been used for privacy but no longer appeared in the plans. If you can address those two issues, I'd appreciate it.
I think that's the same thing. I think those are the 35 trees that were down by Hillbrook that the gentleman was talking about screening his property. Do we have our consulting arborist on Zoom?
You're a consulting arborist? Your landscape architect?
Our arborist through HMH that worked with your consulting arborist on the trees.
Is that Michael? Is it Michael?
Hold on, we're checking.
It must be because he's raising his hand.
Yes. Is he on audio?
Not yet.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Thank you. First of all, this is Steve Raspy. Did you hear my question for the applicant?
If you could repeat it, I'd
Of
appreciate
course.
it.
And for our record, if you could also state your name for the record. But the question essentially was, we had commentators indicate concern about the trees and specifically the movement or removal of trees on the Hillbrook side that would have created privacy for the neighboring lots. There seems to be some concern that either those trees were removed when they didn't need to be or some other issue. If you could address that.
My name is Michael Gladden, and my firm is McClintock Landscape. And so most of the trees that I assessed or all the trees that I assessed are in the report. And I believe that the trees that were slated for removal were ones that were in poor condition, and it is all in the report. The replacement of 35 trees, I think that's part of the landscape team, architecture team.
Chairman, may I follow up? Yeah. Do we have maybe, it would be easy if we had a visual rendering? If applicant can point us to something we can look at in the drawings, maybe that would help us visualize what's happening.
And additionally, through the chair, Sean Taylor, the landscape architect, also is able to speak.
Oh, very good. Maybe while we're looking for that visual, the landscape architect would want to speak?
Hey, checking to see if you guys can hear me okay.
Yes, please, continue.
Hi, I'm Sean Taylor with H&H Landscape Architecture. Good evening, Planning Commission and attendees. Decisions were made for tree removal based on a few things. First, I want to point out that the majority of trees on this site are being kept and protected and remain. For that corner of the site and much of the site where we're developing, we did follow hillside wildland urban interface for defensible spaces per CAL FIRE requirements. So in keeping with that, through zone 3, there was some thinning that's done through the site as well per those requirements so that, you know, we can control wildfire spread. We definitely looked at the value of each tree, the health of it, and tried to selectively remove and then keep larger trees to help with some of the screening and view blocking.
So I will reserve further questions. I think the chair has questions on trees. Oh, okay. Well, let me ask you this then. What specific efforts are being made to provide privacy plantings for the neighboring lots?
So we have maximized the number of proposed trees within our fire zones, as well as locating shrubs, retaining walls, to control those views as best we can with our limitation on planting density within these zones.
And let me redirect the question to you, sir. Would you, assuming the project proceeds, be willing to work with the neighbors to directly address any privacy concerns they might have and tailor your planting needs to the extent you could to address their needs?
Yes, absolutely. I mean, the corner in question, obviously, we've got a lot happening there. That's where there's grade. It's where there's multiple property owners, including Hillbrook. And just, you know, the general direction has been be sensitive to that with planting, home orientation, everything else. But if something was missed or there's a better solution proposed by a neighbor that would be better, then of course. I mean, that's same with just the notion of which trees are being removed. We're not by any means suggesting, remove everything possible. Everything that we've relied on based on the feedback from the consultants is, preserve what we can and be sensitive to creating the neighborhood through there. So that still applies, whatever we need to do.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Okay, I have a follow-up question. I'm sorry. Is Michael the first? Okay, Michael, I have a question for you. You said that you surveyed and recorded all the trees, and then you said that most trees are being kept. Can you elaborate on what you mean by that? Because according to the stuff I have in front of me, that is not what I see.
I was referring to the area next to Hillbrook School.
Okay.
And the retention numbers are in the report, and I believe on the plans.
Okay, so I was confused because 35% of the trees are being removed, and I guess there's not a definition for most, but okay, so you were referring to the trees specifically in that spot near Hillbrook that we just discussed. Okay, thank you. I have a couple other tree questions. The tree in lieu fees versus plantings. Can someone just on the applicant team walk me through how we decided to only be planting 15% of the required trees, the replacement trees, and where we chose to do those, and the species? Thank you.
That's got to be for Sean, our landscape architect, who's on as well.
Hi. So again, we maximized the number of proposed trees that we could, and that's based on the areas that we are developing. And the maximum number is being held by following our CAL FIRE hillside urban interface zones. So I can't really add trees, within that developed area and maintain that defensible space area. The species of plants of trees that we're using are in the plans. A lot of them are native. We've got blue oak, coast live oak, arbutus, western redbud, and then we're supplementing some of the decorative trees with pineapple guava, crepe myrtles, and the Columbia London plane trees.
Okay, thank you. And we've had quite a few projects recently where we've had a lot of, trees, and it's obviously this is a very different site. But a lot of our recent applicants have been very amenable to planting native species, actually. So is that something that your team would be open to, is planting native species unless it's a fruit tree, something that provides a food service?
Yeah, absolutely. Most of our plant palette is native, and we can review that and utilize even more natives. That would not be a problem.
Okay, thank you. My last question about trees is that as of now, the project is requesting to remove 12 large protected trees. Were there any efforts in the development plans with the lot splitting and the home locations and structures and roads to try and avoid any of those trees that are being removed in order to incorporate them into the development? So
yeah, to the extent that we worked with Sean and the team to be the least impactful, there's a lot of levers that have to get pulled to figure out how we're going to navigate the hillside and everything else. That was just generally broad direction. I don't think we did a deep dive analysis on a particular one or amount I think I know what you mean, to the extent you drive down Santa Rosa and maybe there's something and there's a road and that I think that as I know the topography, I don't know that there's a circumstance like that. But if there is, or again, something had been missed, we're certainly open to taking a look at that, because I think that goes along with the whole character and the design of the neighborhood, is to be compatible with the hillside and what's there, and certainly not stick out like a sore thumb to any neighbor or any public view. And that was all analyzed in our visual analysis and everything else. So absolutely.
Okay, thank you. I'm done with trees, but I do have another question. But do you want to go? Oh, perfect. Okay.
One question for the landscape architect, please. I'm going to go back to lot 4 and 5. It looks like behind those lots where the retaining walls are, and I can see the line of grading. I'd like to know what plantings you're suggesting on the very back side of those that will anchor down the soils. That was a pretty lengthy, I don't know, sprawl of trees of various sizes, which obviously those roots were holding down the soils so that as water came down the hill, it was avoiding erosion into the yards. So I'd like to know what kind of plantings you're going to put along that fence line to maintain that.
Can you guys still hear me okay?
Yeah.
Along those two lots that is being regraded, there are retaining walls going in, and we know that the slope needs stabilized. So as part of this plan set, not going into too much detail, what we've proposed is a slope stabilizing native hydroseed mix that we would be defining, or it would be defined later in your construction documentation. So that is recognized as needing slope stabilization and the proper planting.
Okay, thank you.
Yes.
Okay, my next question is about the pervious concrete. And I think that, yeah, the engineers, thank you. If you could just tell me about what that material is, what your experience with it is, and how durable it is.
So it is going to be durable enough for an emergency vehicle to be able to drive on top of it. That is per requirements, so we'll have to take that loading. And it follows the standards that are made for us to be able to adhere to per local regulations.
Okay. Vice Chair Birch.
Sorry, I had a couple of questions about that too, so she's reading my mind. My limited experience with pervious pavement is that it is a lot less durable and not as strong as pavement. And so with frequent trips, and especially if it's heavier vehicles, it actually breaks down faster. It can clog with silt. It has some issues with, seeping into the groundwater. I guess I'd be curious if in the CCRs, what does the maintenance of that road look like? And have you really fully analyzed it? You've got it on the main in and out spot right there, right? So it's going to get the bulk of the weight. And if you have done that analysis, is it a report that staff has?
So it would be included as part of the operation and maintenance agreement, and the frequency of that. We don't have that report or frequency yet, but will be provided at the time of construction documents are provided and prepared for the project.
Okay. Commissioner Sardi.
Thank you, Chair. I wanted to pivot back to discussion of the concessions and the actual and identifiable costs, which Commissioner Burnett touched on a little bit earlier. And what I wanted to focus on a little bit more was the rationale behind no trails and no open space easements. And so my understanding, I know that the bar is relatively low with respect to builder's remedy. You can just say it's expensive, I guess. I don't see any analysis related to actual and identifiable costs in the justification letter. It's fairly brief. It's like 5 pages. Not that it needs to be super wordy and long, but I just don't see any analysis at all with respect to finance. And I'm curious to know, I mean, if you can add a little bit more detail about what you anticipate would potentially be an unacceptable cost or an excessive cost associated with a simple addition of a trail. And yeah, I'll stick to that first question first, I guess.
Right. It's a hard one to quantify. I mean, we're very nervous in general of how long the project is taking to move through the process, what the market's going to be like. It's razor thin all the time now on trying to deliver it. A residential subdivision like this is a long project, takes a long time to deliver it as well. I can't quantify, you know, in a dollar sense, like, okay, hey, we hit a threshold of 100 or 200 or $2 million and decided not to do anything like that. I think the overall proposal was to keep this project very simple. You can see the lotting plan. It's pretty simple. We've shifted based on some of the feedback in 2018, we've shifted some of the homes down the hill. We didn't have an elaborate cul-de-sac coming off of Cerro Vista as they did before. There were different options that were proposed with open space and trails and whatnot, and we basically just tried to simplify everything in an overarching attempt to make it a feasible project, cost-wise. I don't have hey, if we had proposed to put in a trail connection through the upper lots, you know, how that would look, what the cost would be. There's a little bit of a marketability issue as well with, I know it's nice for the neighborhood and everybody else, but also for the home to have the public walking through the backyard, or how we design around that, or how it fits into part of the topography that isn't impactful. We didn't spend time or dollars reanalyzing that. So I know, okay. I wish I could give you a more clear, definitive, like it was going to be this, and it just kicked the project budget too high, but I don't think I have that for you.
And then just to kind of follow up on that, I'm thinking about just the notion of a conservation easement or an open space easement. It seems like a line on a map to me in its simplest form. I know sometimes conservation easements can come with some maintenance. Would not necessarily be a cost now to the developer. It would be a maintenance cost to an HOA, or to if it's not an HOA, to a private homeowner. I don't know if you can elaborate any more on what would be actual and identifiable cost to a conservation easement.
So that one's also challenging. We just ran into this issue on another project nearby that town staff helped us navigate, something that was done for different reasons, and then something changed, and it was something that we had to navigate, and it was an impact. Fortunately, that situation worked out okay. I think we're a little unclear on what needs to be done there or what's being requested. There's some identified lots to say that there might be some features that should be protected or whatever it might be. I think we're open to like working with staff or at your direction on, hey, these are the things that we want to see there. And I think that we might be able to get to a point where some of that doesn't have as great of an impact, but it's still going back to that high level. It's drafting legal, putting easements in place, engineering it, maps, civil, just, you know, ratcheting up. So it was a decision of how we were going to present the project to set that to the side if it wasn't going to be something that was necessary. If it becomes a really critical issue, we're, like any of these, we're open to listening and seeing if we can take care of it. Understood.
I'm curious to know if, so a lot of the concern and maybe the anxiety associated with something like this is the unknown. And my mind keeps returning to this because I see a potential community benefit that just kind of leaps off the page at me. And I'll disclose that I'm a cyclist, and so I'm a little bit biased in that direction. But Kennedy Road is a particularly dangerous road, and right now we've got trails that are in the adjacent subdivision that almost connect, don't quite make the connection, but almost connect to Brookacres Drive. It doesn't seem to me that it would be too terribly expensive to align a pedestrian bike trail immediately adjacent to the EBA that comes off Brookacres and then just connects to the roadway system and makes its way out to Longmeadow. And then you have the ability to have a cyclist hop off a really dangerous road and spend a considerable amount of time weaving through a beautiful path through neighborhoods and making their way back out to Kennedy. So that's just something I'll throw out there. I don't know if that's something that you would consider. That takes away some of the ambiguity maybe to it, and may align well with some of the improvements that are already being done and keep the cost down. I don't know.
I see what you're saying logistically through there. I mean, again, we have a number of things that we're going to look at. We'll have to see at the end of the meeting what are the the things that we're going to need to look at for the council or for you again or whatever. And definitely open to doing that. I just all of these decisions were predicated on the simplicity, which is what you're looking at, and some of the other things that have come up and why we made the decisions that we did. And along with our architect trying to keep, I guess, the design very, very rural. It is luxury home subdivision, but to that end, I think it is like on the minimalistic side with kind of downplayed architecture and really beautiful stuff, and just the way that the driveways and how the private road is going to look and all that. And I think it'd be a wonderful place to cycle and connect in through Brook Acres, through the EVA Trail, whatever it might be. So if there's some kind of a design element or safety or feature that we need to put in place to allow for that, of course. If it's something more than that, if it's taking property and out of some of the backyards of the upper lots, I mean, again, we can look at that. I don't know the logistics and what the cost implications are going to be right now.
Okay, just something to think about. Thank you.
Just as a follow-up to that, I understand the maintenance in the long term is something that is not, that the cost is difficult to capture, but I think that, would you be open to, looking at some of these options and looking into either having some sort of open space conservation easement or trail easement and possibly, I don't know, I know that there are land trusts out there. There are resources. There is, you can set up, this is a very large project. I'm not an expert in this, but would it be possible to set up some sort of land trust that you can collect money from now that can maintain that at least for the foreseeable future? Has any of that financial aspect been considered?
We have not looked into anything like that. I'm thinking of different conditions around town and how they are, and whether they're owned by the town or they're public or they're easement over somebody else's property. And I haven't personally done anything like that on a project to understand what all the options are. But just like everything else, I mean, if there's a logical way that we can accommodate people or the needs, and it isn't something that's going to prevent the project from going forward financially, and we're very open to cooperating.
Okay, thank you. Are there questions? I did have one more question for, I think, the engineers again about the very corner. I'm sorry, Mr. Mullen, could you pull up the same 5.0, I guess, probably? The very corner between lots 5 and 6, that area is, can you just explain that kind of and talk through the engineering and the water situation with that large swell down there? Yeah. And that whole corner area, because on some of the plans it even says it's an existing wetland. So, oh yeah, sorry, can you grab the microphone? Thank you. And the swell that's there and how it's going to function. And then in the very corner on some of the documents, it says there's an existing wetland to remain. So just, does that change? Is it seasonal that it changes? Is it existing all year? Is that the maximum?
So this stormwater bioretention here is collecting and treating through hard pipes that are coming in this way. They are conveying water off of this hardscape as well as all the hardscape from Lot 6 and Lot 5. All of it is being conveyed into this bioretention. Bioretention will treat it, bioretention will contain it, and then it will, through hydromodification with an orifice, release it out in this direction to this hard pipe storm drain system, ultimately connecting to the existing system that you have coming out here.
And so that will be all underground,
All of the
connection?
Yes, all of the underground, all of the storm drain system is completely underground, yes.
Okay, and so then that wetland, it shouldn't like impact or connect to the wetland area that's directly adjacent to it, or?
So this storm drain system here, which is actually tied into this one here, which picks up Lot 10, all of it hydraulically ties into the existing system and exits the site.
Okay. Okay, thank you very much. Okay, are there any other questions for the applicant team at this time before we close the public portion? Okay, so we will now close the public portion of the public hearing on item number 1. Thank you for everyone also on Zoom from the applicant team that was here to answer all of our questions. And I think that we will be taking a break, but before we do that, I just wanted to make a recommendation that about how we start our discussion when we come back. If we have some specific questions or big major questions for staff, that's fine, but I am thinking that we should, because there is a lot here, I think that we should go through and first talk about the zoning, which I think will be our quickest conversation, and then talk about CEQA, so the initial study and the MND, and then talk about the state density bonus law aspects, including the incentives, concessions, waivers, just making sure we're all on the same page with that and get questions answered about that. Then the specific site plans, and then lastly, the conditions of approval. So I can repeat that for you guys, but if we could, while we take a 10-minute break, if we can just make sure we kind of get our thoughts in order for that, that would be great. And then we'll be back at, what time was it? 9:15. Going to continue with our hearing on item number 1, and we will open it up to comments and questions from commissioners and for staff, and we will first start with any zoning questions or comments.
Thank you, Chair. I don't actually have any questions for staff. I thought the staff report on this issue was exceedingly clear. That is, it's currently a resource conservation zone, and because it's proposed as a builder's remedy project, town is required to rezone it to allow the development to happen, and it's going to be rezoned to low-density residential, which, again, I think makes sense. So on this particular topic, zoning compliance, I have no questions.
Anyone else have anything to say? No? Okay. Great. Then let's move on to our second topic, which is CEQA. So initial study, MND questions. Who would like to kick that off? Commissioner Burnett.
Thank you. So question for staff. I have some real issues with the definition of deferred mitigation, meaning that specific details of a mitigation measure are not followed, are not finalized until after project approval. Is there a way they could coincide that when, I mean, I don't understand how you can have an approval before the project is completed.
Well, I'll start and then probably defer to our representatives from Rainey, the environmental consultants. But I don't recall when that or those letters were written, but the mitigation monitoring and reporting program goes through each mitigation, who's the responsible department, and many of them do have timing associated with them. As I recall, we don't believe there's any deferred mitigation that's being put off, but I just want to get confirmation from Rainey, from Angela DeRosa.
Good evening, Chair and Commissioners. Angela DeRosa with Rainey Planning and Management. We're the third-party consultants that the town hired to prepare the CEQA document for this project. So as far as deferred mitigation, you are allowed under CEQA to rely on a future study or standards so long as there are specific performance measures listed in the mitigation measure. And as long as it identifies the actions to make sure that those performance measures are carried out. And we have included those performance measures in all of the mitigation measures.
And I'd just add, I mean, one common one that we see in a lot of documents, even for projects that are exempt when they go through initial study, there's protected birds, protected bats, depending on what time of the year you're doing it. You know, you have to do them within specific timelines of when construction's going to start. Otherwise, you have to go back out and you get your biologist back out there to do another survey if you miss that, gap. So a number of those things do need to be handled after the fact.
Thank you.
Commissioner Sorty.
Thank you. I'm wondering if staff could put up page 157 of the packet.
Was this the architectural report?
It actually is. It's what I'm trying to do is it does a really good job in color of showing the proximity of the ephemeral drainage to the lot number 8 residence. and it's just kind of helpful for the sake of discussion. There we go. Okay, so I had a question for the environmental consultant, and this goes back to, and I mentioned it earlier, the letter that came from Brian Wines with the Regional Water Quality Board. I think the nature of his letter was, I think he disagreed with the analysis. I think that the specific ask was that the riparian drainage, whether we want to call it ephemeral or riparian, maybe you guys can elaborate on it, be better defined, and that it be defined through the normal process that the regional board goes through with respect to identifying whether something is a water of the state or not, something in their jurisdiction that they control. And so it looked to me like, when I looked at the response to comments, and I'll just read from here, this is, I think, written by the consultant. It says, a site visit was conducted on May 14th, 2025 by LOA, a professional biological consulting firm under contract with the town's environmental consultant, to confirm the characteristics of the on-site ephemeral drainage as part of the biological evaluation. And so I guess my question on that is, what I'm trying to get a sense of is that area that's kind of in a blob there, that's dark gray, and that has some white around it. I think the dark gray is basically the tree canopy, and the white is supposed to be the limit of riparian vegetation, if I'm not mistaken. And we've got a house encroaching pretty closely into it, but who established the boundary of that to begin with? Based on my review of the report, it looks like it's possible that it was established by a surveyor or an engineer simply looking at topo and looking at vegetation, and then you guys might have gone out to just sort of validate that.
Yes, that's exactly correct. It was shown on the site plan, and the biologist that was hired for this project, Live Oak Associates, went out and did site surveys to check the conditions of the site and confirm those areas and the limits of the vegetation associated with that ephemeral drainage.
Okay. And when you went out to confirm that, was there anything on the site that indicated the limit of development in terms of staking or the limit of the house itself, in terms of you guys being able to envision or overlay the development against the riparian area?
Yeah, I believe the biologists had CAD files, so they were able to georeference those and essentially overlay the site plan on the site to confirm those areas. Yeah.
Okay. So, and then my more pressing question, I guess, is there, so was any analysis done by a biologist? Was any analysis done to establish whether there are hydrophytic soils present? Did you dig into the ground? Did you look at the soils and evaluate them? And did they do any analysis of the plant species out there to determine whether or not they're consistent with a wetland or riparian species?
Yes, there were 2 surveys conducted of the site exactly for those reasons, to see the conditions of the site, map out any aquatic features, and there was no wetland type of plants identified for that ephemeral drainage, which is why they had classified it as an ephemeral drainage.
Okay. So it's considered ephemeral drainage. It's got riparian species, but it's not a seasonal wetland by definition.
Correct. It's also not considered riparian vegetation
Okay,
either.
it's not.
It's just oak woodland vegetation that's around it.
Okay. Okay. So I guess it sounds like what the regional board person was asking for was some kind of delineation, but I suppose if you can confirm there are no wetlands out there, then you can draw the conclusion that there's no need for a wetland delineation. I don't know. So, yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, there was one small area of wetland identified on the project site, and it is in the southwesternmost corner associated with Ross Creek, and the project is completely avoiding that. Sorry, I'm mixing it up. Northwestern corner of the site is the small wetland area. The southwestern area of the site is where there's riparian vegetation located, and that's associated with Ross Creek.
Okay.
Sorry for the confusion.
Okay. So I guess in your opinion, then there wouldn't need to be a formal wetland delineation done for the site?
Exactly. And the biologist did look at the old reports that were conducted as part of the 2017 EIR, and as part of that, the U.S. Army Corps did write a letter confirming that the only wetland area under their jurisdiction is that small area in the northwestern corner.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
I have a couple follow-up questions to that. You said the biologist went out to confirm. Can you tell me when that was?
Yes, I have that noted here. Give me 1 second. So they did 2 site visits. One was in December of 2024, and they went back out to the site in May of 2025.
Okay, and then, so they went in December 2024 and May of 2025. And then okay, that's my only question. Vice Chair Birch.
I did have one quick question. As you can see, there's a 10-foot buffer that you guys have called for that goes down. I would like to understand why it's not consistent all the way down. Why does the 10-foot buffer kind of come and go? I don't see any value in that. Why would we not just continue with the 10-foot buffer for the entire?
The 10-foot buffer was not a requirement for the CEQA process. It was what was on the site plan, so we were just analyzing that. The site plans included a 10-foot buffer around the vegetated area.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
So just as a follow-up to that, because there isn't a 10-foot buffer everywhere, how was that analyzed, or did you assume that there would be a 10-foot buffer everywhere in your analysis?
It was our understanding that there would be at least a 10-foot buffer around the entire ephemeral drainage area.
Okay.
I will say that upslope farther of the ephemeral drainage, there's no development proposed, so the buffer is much larger.
Okay. Thank you. Okay, so then I have a follow-up question for town staff. If that, because there isn't a 10-foot buffer on these proposed plans, but it sounds like that is what was reviewed by the environmental consultants. So how do we remedy that?
So these were the plans that were provided to the consultants to review as a part of that. And you can see with the dash line on the ephemeral drain, that's the 10-foot buffer. And looks like there's a segment that's near lot 8 that isn't showing that dash line.
And I think maybe if Ms. DeRosa can explain, I think she tried to explain, but maybe it wasn't caught, was some of these wider sections that have the 10-foot buffer around them, maybe there was some vegetation, if I recall, and where this other one is, there really isn't. It's really just the part of the channel. So, that buffer is not as wide in that point. Because you've all been out to the site, even the gray area isn't, what you see on the ground. Right. So if Ms. DeRosa could provide just a little more clarification on that for the Planning Commission, please.
And if I could interject, Sean, on Exhibit 15, sheet, I'll get you a sheet number. Sheet 6, the erosion control plan, that shows that delineation.
Yeah, just to clarify, the biologist analyzed the site plan as proposed. So where there are 10-foot buffers shown, they analyze that and assume that.
Okay, I have a question about what the process is if a species that is on a species of concern is found on this site, what ends up happening?
So just to clarify, you're asking if a species that wasn't addressed in the MND?
Yeah, yes, like an additional one that if something comes up, because I did see in the biological report, there were a couple that I have that were like this, the closest one is that this many miles away, but like for example, like, yeah, anyway, so there were a few, but I know that I've seen them and other people have seen them closer than 3 miles to that site, so just wondering.
Sure. The species that were identified as potentially occurring on site were based on the biologist's expert's opinion and the conditions of the site from their surveying. Of course, if they're out there doing the pre-construction surveys that are required for the special status species that were identified as by the biologist as potentially being there, the qualified biologist that would be doing that survey would follow protocol to address any other species that they see while they're out there, special status species that they see.
And then just quickly for the public's understanding, can someone clarify in general, I mean, I know that it is in here, but kind of what ends up happening when, what? Yeah, what is the general protocol when a species of special concern is found? I think just because I think that there's a misunderstanding about what happens next.
Well, I can say I don't recall that ever occurring in town because most of those species are already known with the rats and the bats and the raptors. But, you know, we would defer, again, as Mr. Rosa said, to the biologist. There is standard protocol for whether you're encountering that or you're encountering, you know, Native American artifacts or, you know, skeletal remains or any of those things. We would follow the required protocol.
Yeah, I'm sorry, Mike. I meant if anything even included happen in general, just the general protocol for when a species of special concern is on a site. You know, it doesn't mean that everything ceases to stop. There's a couple of different.
Again, when something like that happens, then we would defer to the expert, whether it's a biologic issue or some other issue that also has the potential for creating a situation where something unknown is found.
Okay.
And then we would follow that, you know, generally state or federal required protocol, yes. But I do not have that with me.
Okay, thank you. I had a question about it was in the geologic hazard appendix. So in Appendix D, just again, wondering on the timing of when this was done. And then I also could not determine where like I could not find a map of where the boreholes actually were that were being described. So I was just wondering if you guys, I mean, it's probably in here, but again, this was a giant packet. So someone could just kind of refer me to where I should be looking for that.
Yeah, the geology study was attached to the ISM&D. Let me see. It was included as Appendix D to the ISM&D, and it was prepared in October of 2024. We're trying to pull up the map for you.
Okay, yeah, thank you. If Okay, go for it while they're looking.
Just a quick follow-up on the geotechnical report and the indications of slide areas on the site. From reading the report, it appears that there's no mapped known slides on the site. And I guess what I was curious about was what was used as rationale for identifying areas in a slide zone versus not slide zone. Is this strictly based on slope, or is it soil characteristics? And hopefully I'm right about the map slide zone. If I'm wrong, let me know.
Yeah, so the Santa Clara County maps the site as being in a landslide hazard area, but as part of the geo study, they did a number of test pits and actually looked at the soils on the site in some of those sloped areas. And what they found was no evidence of landslide deposits, no field features indicative of slope failure and instability. So they found that landslide hazards were considered to be low to moderate. And the majority of the proposed residents are outside of the steep slope areas.
Okay, I'm looking at, sorry, I'm trying to find the specific map. There's one particular map that shows, I think it's most of lot 8 as being kind of painted yellow. And I thought it was indicating that it was in a slide zone, but maybe I'm not getting that right. Here we go. So it's in the packet, page 1092. Anyway, it's lot 9, architectural and site review. And I'm just noticing that the area, it just says landslide hazard zone, and it maps it in yellow, and it brings it, yeah, it looks like it's mostly, a significant portion of it is on lot 9 and lot 8. There we go. So I don't know if I'm asking the same question, but I guess I'm just wondering what led to the characterization of that area to be in a slide zone versus not the rest of it, and if it's just based on slope or if it's also just based on the soil borings and the characteristics.
Yeah, I think those shaded areas, I believe, are from the county maps that are showing that landslide hazard area.
Okay, so the county map shows it, but we're not really sure why. It sounds like, I mean, I don't want to draw an unnecessary conclusion or unsupported conclusion, but if there were borings done, it sounds like there were no mapped actual landslides found. And that way we're not looking at a hazard that severe. We're just looking at a resource and constraint map that looks at things from like a 10,000 foot level. So,
yeah.
Is that correct?
It's definitely based off the borings, and there's a mitigation measure included in the MND that requires compliance with the recommendations of the geo study. So there are some recommendations to ensure that slope stability is addressed.
Okay, thank you.
And we found the map of the test borings. It's an attachment to the geotechnical report. The second figure. There's no figure numbers on it.
That's all I had on geo.
Okay, while she's looking for the document she's trying to find, I have a non-geotechnical question. We received a couple letters from the Sierra Club and the Santa Clara Valley Bird Alliance, and I have one dated October 17th. And in this letter, they state a few concerns around the document, and that they feel that it doesn't properly address certain concerns, some of them that we've talked about tonight. But one of them, which was, I don't know, kind of the biggie I thought, was a statement that says, procedural deficiencies under CEQA, including reliance on deferred mitigation, absence of required agency consultation, and disregard of substantial evidence submitted by a responsible agency. Have you guys taken a look at this document, and is there a way that you would answer to confirm for us that, in fact, those things have been done?
Yeah, I think included in your packet is detailed responses to that exact letter.
Those might have been an addendum 2 or the desk item, Ms. Walters?
It was an addendum 2. It was part of the attachment there.
And I think that comment in particular was related to the water board's comments. They were referring to the water board's comment letter.
Paperwork up here. Sorry, so you said that the geology report was done in October 2024.
That's correct.
Okay, so I just have a kind of a follow-up question, because there was, we've been out to the site, and obviously, well, we haven't had a lot of rain as of now, but it's wet out there, and there, those holes would have been, those boreholes would have been done at when the water table is presumably the lowest, because it's in October. So it does explicitly say in this part of the groundwater report that that's likely, not represented at the stabilized levels. They can be higher than initial levels encountered, et cetera. So how is that taken into account? Or, it just is a very wet area. So how can we make sure that there isn't water, really, like the water table isn't at the surface in some of these spots?
Well, I can start, and then if anyone else has any other questions, but ultimately, when, if the project gets approved and development plans come forward, there'll be additional geotechnical work that will have to be done for the specific foundations and soils work. But, as you mentioned, the water table can fluctuate, and so we're not going to have them go out every week and test the soil. And if they do encounter water, this happens all the time in town, especially when folks do cellars, then they end up having to get a system to make sure they're dewatering that, obviously in an appropriate manner, so that it doesn't impact the site or off-site properties. And do you have Exhibit D with you? So I think page 37 is the last page of the geotech report. So the second page after that is, I believe, what Ms. DeRosa was, so that shows the borings. And
okay, thank you. Is there anything else okay. Commissioner Burnett.
Thank you. I'd like to ask a question representing CEQA, correct? So what did you base your findings on to believe that the mitigated negative declaration was all that was needed, and any concerns were less than significant and that could be mitigated on this complex project? This is a very involved project, And then, did you rely at all on an outdated, uncertified EIR in 2017? And at that time, that was based on a 55,000 square foot, area, and it did address, it did cite potential significant impacts. So my question to you is, did you rely at all on that report? Even it was uncertified, and it was an EIR report. I'm just finding that there's a lot of areas here that I think seem to have a lot of unanswered questions. So that's my question to you.
The general answer is no, we didn't rely on the prior EIR. As you note, it was uncertified, and it was from multiple years ago. So this ISM&D is a full independent analysis with new project-specific reports conducted. So we did not rely on prior reports prepared for that EIR.
And I'd be curious, you mentioned potential significant impacts. So, I mean, all of these reports, whether it's an EIR or an M&D, have potential significant impacts. But it's my recollection, even though that's many moons ago, that even though that project did an EIR, they were able to mitigate all of those impacts to less than significant. There were no significant unavoidable impacts, even with the EIR.
I believe I read that they did cite in that EIR report that there was some potential significant impacts.
Correct. Every one of these looks at potential significant impacts. But if it can't be mitigated, it becomes significant and unavoidable. That's when you absolutely have to do an EIR. We have had in the past, and so the Planning Commission and Council have seen that before, a number of projects that have decided, even though they don't have any significant unavoidable impacts and could get CEQA clearance through a mitigated negative declaration, they have chosen to do an EIR because that has a higher bar from a lawsuit perspective for the applicant. But in this case, the applicant didn't choose to go down that path, and it's not necessary to go down that path because there aren't significant unavoidable impacts at this point. But I'll go back and look because I don't remember any that were from the previous project either.
Okay, should we move on to the next? If we have any more environmental questions, we can come back to it. Our next, I don't even have my list. What do we, oh, okay. So next, I think we should discuss the state density bonus law, all of the, incentives, concessions, waivers, walking through some of that. And so I think that before I open it up to everyone else, I just would like a clarification again from the town attorney about the identifiable and actual cost reduction, the language and the findings that we need to make to grant these incentives for the, sorry, let me get this open to that page. The language that we need states.
So I think I remember what part of the presentation you're referring to. So the burden is on the town to demonstrate that the requested concession or incentive would not result in a cost reduction. And the way that we normally determine that information is we ask the applicant to give us a general explanation of how the concession or incentive results in a cost reduction. There is a case out there saying that public agencies can't require pro formas, and so the town doesn't require a pro forma, but we do require an explanation of what the cost reduction consists of.
Okay, and then it, to provide for affordable housing, is it, is that just, what does that mean?
So that language comes from the statute. It's hard to interpret, and so our position has been, does this incentive or concession result in a cost reduction to the project overall? Because the project by definition has to include a component of affordable housing in order to even qualify.
Okay. So, okay, I'm just curious because I think that this is one of the findings that we have to make for the concessions or incentives for the open space conservation trails situation, and the staff report, it just says to provide for affordable housing costs. And so I understand the project. I mean, clearly understand sidewalks, how expensive those can be, and it's very clear that that would significantly change the project financially. But I think that that I'm not sure that I personally have enough information about the actual cost reduction by avoiding having an easement for open space. But I'm curious to see what other commissioners have to say about that.
And I would just remind the Planning Commission, staff wasn't able to make the finding from our perspective for the open space component. Mm-hmm. We actually were for the trails, so you might want to discuss that one as well. Obviously, it's the initial installation of that. You've been out to the site. It basically comes into the site, traverses the perimeter, and goes all the way up to Sarah Vista. Yeah. Obviously, there will be a cost associated with that. Yeah. But just wanted to throw that little bit of background for your discussion.
Thank you.
Can you expand on the trails?
Expand on them? Well, make them bigger?
I guess aside from maybe, saying we have to do the physical trails, could we do an easement for trails?
I think you could request that be part of your recommendation to move forward, that, at a minimum, trails. I mean, obviously, we heard tonight from planning commissioners that they don't necessarily have enough information on the monetary impact of the project for even going to the level of doing the trails. So definitely, that could definitely be part of any recommendation moving forward.
Okay.
And then as a follow-up to that, if there was an easement, if a land trust or community group or something came along down the line to fund and maintain and set up a situation for that, is that how that would legally work, or?
The condition could be open-ended. It could require the easement be dedicated, and then it could specify that, either the town would make improvements later, or, as you mentioned, another group might come along and make improvements.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks, Chair. So I'm looking at our staff report, starting at page 14 and going to page 15. It has a list of both the incentives and the waivers. And so maybe a good way to do it would be attack those in order. And so looking at the incentives, beginning with the story poles and not providing sidewalks, it seems to me that I understand the cost savings with those. And perhaps we can agree with the developer on that. Going to trails and the space easements, again, the open space easement, I think conditions of approval, which are part of our packet for lots, 2, 7, 8, 9, and 10, that's already part of our packet. And I would recommend that we incorporate that as part of any approval if we were going to have an approval. I would also encourage us to include the trail system. To me, it seems to be a way of, if cost really is an issue to the developer, it could be foisted back to the homeowners by way of making it an HOA cost for maintenance, for initial build and maintenance. I think divided over 12, or even if you want to take the BMPs out of it to a lesser degree of those houses, it would be an inconsequential expense to them. So I think we can find that it's not an insurmountable burden to make that as part of this project. Those are my thoughts on the incentives.
Okay, I think that we're all on the same page with regards to that. Okay, so then with the waivers, does anyone have any questions or want to discuss? I would just say that the LRDA is something that we see very often, obviously, in the hillside. So I don't think that's even something that.
I think, again, maybe, Sean, if you can bring up the finding, because that one has a little bit different than the monetary.
Yeah.
And it really gets back to anything that's going to impact the project as it's proposed.
Yes. I guess that most of the time when we've been looking at these projects and everything, it's just about obviously making sure that there's these waivers are necessary for these projects, and then just making sure that if there's anything that the applicant team is still willing to address in a different way, or has, which I think that they stated that they want feedback on, just so I just want to give them an opportunity to hear if we have any concerns with any of these, even though we know that we would still not be able to make this finding we would not be rejecting the project because of that. But if they're going to be providing us more information or making any additional changes or prioritizing things. So Commissioner Burnett.
Sure. So the question would be to staff regarding the below market program that we have, the Los Gatos. There are concerns over the size and location. I know this is a waiver but under the state density bonus law, but I wonder if staff has any concerns over that, the below market, the 3 below market homes.
Yeah, it's, we debated it internally because it is a question as to whether that physically precludes the development as proposed. Where I landed is that I think requiring a different configuration of the BMR units would physically preclude the development as proposed. And then internally, we also looked at it from the fair housing angle. Is this violating any state fair housing laws? We did not locate any state laws that were being violated. That said, nothing prevents the commission from asking the applicant if they would be able to reconfigure the BMP units.
And I think the other challenge that we ran across was the language of our guidelines related to that area is not objective, from what I recall. So we'll go back and look at that language as well, but that's part of my recollection as well. So you couldn't impose it anyway.
Thank you.
Is there anything else related to the, assuming that the applicant is perhaps amenable to some of our feedback, is there anything else related to any of the waivers that we feel like could be addressed in another way? Or mitigate, or no? Okay. Vice Chair Birch.
Well, I think the one that I had highlighted was actually the swimming pools on the slopes greater than 30%, but I saw that was addressed in the proposed conditions of approval. That was the one I had highlighted, and the location of the BMPs, which Commissioner Burnett asked. Aside from that, no, I don't think so.
Okay. Okie doke, then let's move on to the site plans. Starting, with Commissioner Sorty, go for it.
I think this falls into the realm of site plan. So this may be a question for Public Works, City Engineer. So I think the conditions of approval require CC&Rs, but not an HOA, right? And so right now, presumably the CC&Rs would be written in such a way to put the onus and the responsibility on the individual lot owner to maintain the stormwater facilities. And I'm interested to hear feedback from Public Works, City Engineer on that. I know from time to time the regional board audits these things, and it would be kind of a shame if we ended up getting fined, because I think the fines get directed into the public agency, not to the individual, and you just simply can't control who's going to own those lots and how they're going to treat those facilities. So I would just be interested in your feedback on whether that's a practical
I'll
solution.
start, and then Parks and Public Works can correct me when I'm wrong. Ultimately, yes, it would be in the CCNRs. It is on the property owners. There are yearly inspections that are done to address that. These are all over town. They're all over single-family lots. So this is not a unique practice. This is just something that we have to do as part of our stormwater permit. And then if there's anything else that needs to be added, I'd turn to Mr. Sparks or the town engineer.
Okay. And I am curious, just a quick follow-up. So if something's in disrepair or just, destroyed or ruined in the property, like, what's the remedy? I mean, you fine the property owner? Does it become a code enforcement issue? How do you impose the fix on them?
Yeah, I mean, we'd have both an engineer that does inspections, and we also have building inspectors that do some different inspections, so it's kind of split from what I recall. But I imagine there are enforcement capabilities associated with that permit. Let me just look to Mr. Heap for a nod. So yes, there are enforcement provisions that we, when necessary, will handle.
Thanks. And then, it leads me to disclosures, I guess. I mean, CCNRs are one thing. A new homeowner that buys a lot doesn't necessarily have to, you can presume they read the CCNRs, but the real way to really make sure they know that there's additional budgetary restrictions associated with owning a lot and having to maintain a storm facility would be like a recorded, maybe recording something would go pretty far, but having a disclosure, which I know is typically provided by the seller. I guess it's just a suggestion so that it calls it out. It makes it really crystal clear that somebody's going to have to dip into their pocket and maintain this thing from time to time.
Yeah, and we can work with Parks and Public Works. They're generally not going to see the recorded subdivision map either, but I could see that as being a note. But we can definitely look into that recommendation and see what options are out there.
Okay, thank you.
I was wondering if, and I don't know, this might be staff or it might be the consultants actually, I'm not sure. Was there any study done on stormwater being drained into Ross Creek?
So I think we definitely have Parks and Public Works staff here. Our planning application checklist requires that preliminary grading and drainage plans be submitted. Obviously, you've seen the plans. They go far beyond that. But there still are things that need to be ironed out. And so that will happen again. It's one of those things where once we get down to if the project gets approved and they're getting construction drawings, then they'll have to get final sign off for C3 and other components. And if any of those trigger any significant modifications to what was, if approved by the town council, then they may be subject to coming back through for modification, which I don't know what, but there may be ramifications there. So I know Parks and Public Works has done some work on that, but we're not in a final grading and drainage plan, for instance.
Can I actually ask a follow-up question to that? Because that was going to be one of my questions. What we actually have says it's a preliminary grading plan. When do you guys typically see a more thorough grading plan?
Yeah, so the process is after you go through the architecture and site, there's an additional grading permit that you go directly to Parks and Public Works for, and they have a completely separate process where they're nailing down all of those details, right? So that's when that is going to get handled. Some of these requirements, and we hear it a lot from architects and applicants of, I don't even know if I'm going to get to build my house. Why are you going to make me spend tens of thousands of dollars, getting even to the level we request them to get to? So it's a very significant risk from their perception for any applicant that comes through our process.
Burnett.
So question, so how can the Planning Commission recommend this to the town council if we don't have all the evidence, especially regarding the drainage. And I mean, if we're still waiting for reports, or waiting.
Yeah, if you're not comfortable with what's been proposed, then you can always recommend denial.
Thank you.
Okay. Are there any other questions or anything about the site plans that we have questions about? No. Yeah, we asked a lot earlier. Okay. So yeah, the last thing is conditions of approval. For us to look at or discuss, go through. So there's a very extensive, obviously, as always, in this area. So is there anything specific that has come up tonight that we would, or a question specifically about the conditions of approval or changes, additions, etc.? Sure, Rich.
I had one that I wanted to bring up that just did have to do with the residential street. Since this is a rather large lot, can I request that we would add a condition of approval that there be conditions made to where construction vehicles and parking would be on the property, not on the street, and not have construction trucks parked or idling on the street for, longer than 5 minutes or something? Okay. He nodded at me, so.
I mean, I'm sure there's already something in there that discusses that, but you are potentially going to be recommending more specificity when they look through that construction management plan moving forward.
Yeah, I just added a couple things on top of what he had in here already.
Okay, and then I think there was a question about there was another one that.
I think the other two I heard was something to handle the trails and then also the open space easements. Those were two other topics.
Yes.
And then the other might have been related to trees.
Yeah, the tree. Okay, yes.
If I can follow up on the trees, then I'm looking in the area of COV 11, 12, or 13. You heard our prior discussion about coming to some accommodation with respect to privacy that would satisfy neighbors. If we could incorporate some of those ideas into a C of A, probably in one of those numbered areas, I think that would be helpful.
Yeah, and I think as you heard from the landscape architect, I think it does get to be a challenge when you're in, technically, actually, I think there was a speaker this evening, they're technically currently in the high fire hazard severity zone, but because they vested to the previous maps prior to the recent modifications, they were in very high. They're still being subject to the very high requirements. So many of fire's requirements that are currently in there, if they came in today, they wouldn't have to do. That's an aside, but again, it was getting to that balance of, how many trees can we plant, how dense can they be, based on that defensible space, based on the defensible space requirements that are out there. So, but to the maximum extent feasible, sure.
I think, yeah, we all agree on the point, to the extent allowed by applicable law, et cetera. Thank you.
And this may be in the conditions approval, but again, this is a lot of paperwork. Don't we have something in here about the type of fencing that can be allowed in like open space like this so that it maintains wildlife corridors?
It's not specific in the conditions, but that is a part of the town code, and so they would be subject to the town code requirements. The town code does specify what's allowed in the hillside area.
Okay. And then I did have one other one, which is I know is going to be like weirdly specific, but what was said and what's on the plans are different. So if you look on the plans at lot 4 and 5, and between the lowest retaining wall and the property behind them, the landscape architect actually said that there was like hydroseed and plantings that would avoid erosion. That actually isn't on the plans. It's shown on the upper tiers of the retaining walls, and I just want to make sure that there are plantings between those properties and the properties behind them because of the elevation change that avoid that type of soil erosion.
Chair, if I can just ask my fellow commissioners, one of the issues is then the open space easement. And I'm just curious as to what lots you think those would be implicated. I think it's 10 and 8 and perhaps 9, but I just want to make sure we're all kind of with the same mindset.
It's already in the conditions though, right?
It's not in there yet, is
It
it?
is.
Is it? Yes.
Yeah, see page 40.
Oh, you're right, okay. And so 2 and 7 also.
It includes 2, 7, 8, 9, and 10.
Two already.
Yeah, I think that's right.
Already. So like 2 and then
7,
7,
9, and 10.
8, 9, 10. Yeah. Those, yes. Yeah, I guess. Yeah, do you have another?
Oh, Chair, I was just wondering when would be the appropriate time to bring up a different point of view on the subject
Of the open space or of
the
anything?
project?
Yeah, I just have a follow-up question about the open space, and then actually, it's okay. Never mind. You can bring up whatever you want.
Okay, so I'm coming from a different direction. I believe this project actually brings up I went to a planning commission seminar and it brought up the idea of fair argument standard. And I really believe this project is, really qualifies for that because you have documents from the Coast Ridge Ecology Report. You have the documents from the Sierra Club, the Loma Prieta chapter, documents from the Santa Clara Bird Alliance, all the neighbor concerns. You have San Francisco Bay Regional Water Quality Control Board. I mean, these are sophisticated reports and have a lot of issues, and I feel are, strong reports, and that is why I feel we really need an EIR report. And when you talk about a fair argument standard, you ask when must an EIR be prepared? When it can be prepared, when it can be fairly argued based on substantial evidence in light of the whole record that a project may have a significant environmental effect. And when you read all these documents and you read maybe the past EIR, even though it wasn't certified, the residents, their explanations and their lifelong experiences with this hillside, I think that fairly argued means that there is evidence of the potential for impact in the administrative record before the agency. So I think there's enough evidence, fair argument standard, which is CEQA, that it really deserves to have a full EIR report. I think there's too many questions regarding the water basins, the trees, the hillside slides. I mean, and we questions after questions we've gone over. Where does the water end? Where is it going into Ross Creek, or where are the basins? I mean, there's just for me, one of the commissioners, those would be my comments. So that would be the direction I would go. But I'm just one commissioner here. So
yeah, and through the chair, I mean, I think we talked about this a little bit earlier. I didn't go in as in depth as Commissioner Burnett, but the fair argument is the legal standard I was mentioning that is much lower. So if this goes to court, it's very easy to prove. It's not, it's not as, I think Ms. Quintana used bulletproof, which everyone wished existed even with an EIR, but it doesn't. But, it's a far lower bar to overturn a mitigated neg deck than it is an EIR, which is one of the things we discussed. So if there was a court case following any approval related to CEQA, then that would be the argument.
Okay, so then if we didn't go that road, then I would request a follow-up meeting. We have a total of 5, and I would like some more of these in-depth answers to some of these serious questions for our neighbors, and for the fellow commissioners. I mean, I don't feel like a lot of the questions were answered. So that would be my second, if you feel that way about litigation or whatever. Then my next plan B would be to have a second meeting, because we can have a total of 5, with some of our questions answered, and visiting to the site where the wetlands are. I'd like to see that as well.
Commissioner Sorty?
Yeah, I just wanted to respond to that a little bit and maybe get into a little more detail. I'm hesitant to require more process just for the sake of process. So I think what we really need to do is focus on which questions haven't been answered and to what extent an ISMND is or is not the document appropriate to do that. If you think you're going to find more analysis and it's going to come to a different conclusion just by virtue of changing the process and moving to an EIR from an ISMND, I think you need to go into detail about what it is that you're going to uncover by adding process that is going to be a different conclusion from a technical standpoint, environmental standpoint.
Yeah, I think, again, going back to what we discussed before, I mean, I think it's, initial study checklist, it's the same checklist whether you do a mitigated negative declaration. We've even done them for categorical exemptions as it is for an EIR. So all the same topics are studied, all the same impacts, all the same thresholds and criterion for the various impacts. So the reality, my opinion, and Ms. DeRosa can speak up if she thinks I'm speaking out of turn, is that it would be the same exact conclusions. There'd be no different conclusions. We would be including alternatives to the project, and we've seen this with other projects where they don't have to do an EIR because they have no significant unavoidable impacts, but we have to do alternatives. So you do an alternative so it has less than significant impacts, right? So it doesn't really hit that threshold. The other thing that it looks like I believe, is a little more different cumulative impact perspective, but we're talking about 12 lots here. That's not going to rise to a cumulative impact. So just a little more background from a planning perspective. And Ms. DeRosa, anything else to add?
I have a question just about the mitigation and monitoring. So obviously a project like this takes a while. And so a lot of these, like the implementation schedule is like, for the big-eared bat, for example, it just is like up to 1 year prior. And then within 7 days prior to the start of construction, what happens if there's a delay in construction because of weather or, another pandemic, or we can't get parts and the site is sitting there half developed for a while? How does that factor in?
So we, folks try to get it done really quick to get construction because they have to have those letters prepared by certified biologists per the mitigation direction. And so those would have to be redone if there was a delay. And so there is a specific time frame that's attached to that through those conditions.
So that when we do have a protocol, and we run into that sometimes, where if they don't hit those timelines, they have to start that clock back over, get the biologist back out there for that specific one you mentioned.
Okay, so I hear what Commissioner Burnett is saying, and I agree with Commissioner Sorty that I don't know what, I need more information to make a recommendation, a motion, and to vote on this project as of now. But I think that it's important for us to explain what additional information and questions we have so that staff, consultants, applicant team can provide that information so that we can, move forward with the project in whatever way, shape, or form that's going to happen. So I would like commissioners to express what additional information they would need or like, and then in questions, open questions they still have. Before that though, I do have a question about site visits. As we said, it was a little bit difficult when we went out there because the lack of story poles, et cetera, which I understand why that is happening and it's expensive. So is there a way that we could do some sort of site visits and be able to better understand lot delineations and or where structures are going? Also possibly, is it normal to be able to go out with any consultants to be able to ask some questions and get some answers about some of the space, or is that not normal?
Well, I think going out with consultants would be unique from my perspective. This is a challenging site. I know you guys have all been out there. We went out there once or twice recently, or I did anyhow. I think the applicant heard your request about the difficulty of trying to orient yourself and the different levels and capabilities from kind of orienting yourself while you're out there without any real landmarks other than trying to identify, okay, I see this tree, right? So a general idea of where this is. We can also work with the applicant to, see if they are willing to put some kind of even just staking for some general areas, kind of generally delineating the roadway, maybe corners where the lots hit the roadway, and then you can get a general idea of where that faces to see where those are. Ultimately, that will be up to the applicant to get that site access. So those are what come to mind at this point, but I think that could be part of your direction, depending on your decision this evening. And staff definitely can go back out there, and more staff can go out there as well to just kind of help with the effort. We can have staff stand at the corners of lots. See how that goes.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So I think that just as a follow up to that, the reason I was asking about the consultants is because the biologist that has been out there a couple of times, obviously, and done some surveying. I just when we were just out there, I saw some very specific plants that grow in very specific conditions, and I just don't. It was just hard for me to tell if that was fully captured on what has been mapped, and so that just is my main concern, I guess, with regards to understanding where the water is, the soil saturation, where the actual edge of this area is. And so that's something, I guess, from the environmental review and your team over there, if we could just get if I could get a better understanding of that.
Yeah, and we can definitely look. I'm sure we're probably past budget already, so we're going to have to request additional funds from the applicant. But at a minimum, we can probably get some additional information and or conversations with the biologist in this instance.
Okay. Also, if we have access to some of the the GPS or CAD data and stuff, if that doesn't require use from, some of us can use that information to ourselves if we don't have the budget or we can't get any more money for any of that kind of thing. If there's ways for us to access it in that regard.
So I kind of agree that it does sound like a lot of people up here feel like there should be more information. For me specifically, it still has to do with Ross Creek. I understand what you were saying, but having heard that it does flood rather, regularly, and knowing now that there's a decent amount of stormwater that's going to be dumped into that probably was not before. I would like a little bit more information on that and what that's going to look like and what the impact on the creek would be. I also would probably like to know from you your experience with pervious concrete and its ability to handle the kind of weight required. Like I said, my experiences have not been good. So maybe, if we could look into that a little bit and just sort of have a reassurance that this isn't just going to become like a horrible maintenance nightmare that could not withstand 75,000 pounds if an emergency vehicle had to drive through.
Thank you, Jerry. I am, first of all, I agree with Commissioner Burnett's concerns about making decisions where we don't have all the information and then her desire to have a full CEQA analysis. But I'm going to lean into Mr. Paulson's comments. He's got far more expertise than I think most of us. So I believe that the EIR process probably doesn't land us in a significantly different place. And so I think I'm satisfied to go through with the neg deck subject to containing more information. And so I would echo my fellow chair and vice chair's information or request for a site visit with some delineation, a better understanding of the hydrology issues, especially the creek, especially flooding into the neighboring properties. And then I would add to that the trails and open space issues, whether they are available to the development, and if the position is going to be that they are cost prohibitive, I'd like a discussion of what those costs are so we can evaluate if those are serious prohibitions to instilling those. And lastly, I would like a further discussion or analysis of the trees/privacy issues as it affects the neighboring properties. So those would be the open issues I would add to the discussion for a continued hearing.
And I just want to add on to that with the trees. Most of the, with the request to update to as many native species as possible, most of those species are less flammable or at least a little bit, they are fire adapted at least. And so that could be a part of, I think that ties into that also. I did have a question just about the noise. Noise was brought up by one of the residents with with regards to something I think related to Hillbrook or whatnot. Can you just quickly explain how what the baseline, it's not cumulative. Now there's like a new baseline and then how we mitigate the noise beyond that.
Yeah, we'll definitely bring that back as well. I believe there's also a discussion of that in the MND, if I remember correctly. But we also have town code that deals with it. But a single-family home is not going to generate a noise that is going to be more than the school. I know there's a lot of work went into the Hillbrook issue, but typically that's not going to be an issue from another single-family home. But we'll get you that information as well.
And it is in the NMD or the MND, but I think that it's just that the baseline, there's a new baseline because the Hillbrook situation already exists. So the current conditions is what is the baseline for then the next.
Right.
They don't have, like, a new project doesn't have to take into account that Hillbrook is there and loud. Is what I'm trying to.
That's correct. And there'll also be other noise impacts, but they're going to be short-term related to construction typically.
Yes, and there are restrictions on that too in town. Okay, thank you. Commissioner Burnett.
Thank you, Chair. So my other concerns then would be if we're moving in this direction would be, I have concerns of the buffer zones around the homes, but I also would wonder if the applicant would be look at maybe doing extra effort for the homes that are really impacted by the, I think it's lot, what lot is that on that corner? Yeah, I think it's lot 5. Lot 5. The lots that are really impacted by, like if water is just an overwhelming amount, if you could do some extra kind of, basins or work with the client, work with the homeowners, just to sort of ease their fears, which are good, I mean, reasonable. So that would be my suggestion as well.
Okay, are there, yes, Commissioner Swarty.
So, yeah, if we are going in the direction of continuing the item, I would support that. I think that it's always a challenge when we're thrown like a 2,000-page packet just a few days in advance. So I support my colleagues' desire to get more information on the items discussed. I would encourage the applicant on the trails item to maybe consider some options and maybe be prepared to speak more in detail about what might be on the table. I know that you don't want to negotiate in a vacuum, but if we're going in that direction, I just want to take note of the fact that I think the existing alignment of a trail, if I understand it right, would sort of pass through lots 4, 5, 6, 7 and make their way up to the top of the hill to Cerro Vista, and that might be a little bit troublesome and possibly pretty expensive, considering the slope you have to cover and the lots that you have to cross, and there's a possibility that you'd have to secure an off-site easement versus the potential ease of coming through Brook Acres and just possibly placing a pedestrian bike easement right over the top of the EVE and connecting. So anyway, just wanted to put a little more detail to that. That's it.
Okay. Is there anything else that we would like to say before we move on? Okay. So it looks like we're in favor of a continuance of this item. I think that the goal would be to do that as soon as everyone is ready to come back with information, but not with a date certain, because there's a lot of, I don't know, we have no idea how long any of this is going to take any of you. So I think we'll decide that. I know it's a little unconventional, but I do want to ask the town attorney if we can open up public comment, just to ask the applicant if there is any additional things that they want us to provide guidance or feedback on before we close this, so that they can get clarification on the additional information that we're seeking.
Yes, if the commission does that, I recommend opening up public comment for everybody. If it's not a specific question, if you're just getting feedback.
Can I ask just a yes or no? No.
Well, do you have a specific question for the applicant? Because you could open up the comment period just to get an answer to that specific question.
I just wanted a specific yes or no if we were able to provide enough information, details going forward for them to answer some of our questions more in depth at the continuance meeting.
So is the question, does the applicant have enough information to provide staff for the following meeting?
Yeah.
Yes.
I will open up public comment just to ask yes or no.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you. Okay. Thank you very much. Do we have what? Oh, I'm reclosing the public comment. And then do we have anyone that wants to make a motion to continue? Vice Chair Birch.
Yeah, I will make a motion to continue this item, not to a date certain, but until staff feels they have the information gathered based on the conversation they heard here tonight.
And
second.
Thank you. And any discussion? I'll call the question. All those in favor, please raise your hand. And the motion passes unanimously. And there's no appeal rights because it's a continuance?
That's correct.
Okay, thank you. Okay, we have no more items on our agenda tonight, and it's a special meeting, so we don't have any updates or anything, but I would just like to say thank you to staff, commissioners, public, the applicant team, all the consultants, everyone that came tonight, and just give a big thank you to Commissioner Raspy. This is his last meeting as a planning commissioner. He's served for 4 years, and we really tried to keep him, but he's going to enjoy his best life splitting time between here and somewhere else that I won't expose you to everyone. But I just want to say that you've been really great. It's really nice to have someone that has a unique perspective, but has provided a lot of guidance. And you were a great chair last year. And so I just want to say personally, thank you.
Well, thank you, Chair. I want to say thank you to staff for all your support and to my fellow commissioners. I'd like to think we started off as coworkers, ended up as friends, and I look forward to seeing you during verbal communications in the future meetings. So thank you all.
Thank you. There being no further business of the commission, this meeting is adjourned.